5th here in the Great Hall. Madam Clerk, if you will please call the roll.
Council King.
Present.
Council Cole.
Present.
Council Vaughn.
Present.
Council Finn.
Present.
Council Harris.
Present.
Council LaFars.
Present.
Council Lillian.
Present.
Council Calhoun. President Hughes.
Present.
You have 9 members. You vote for.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I would like to recognize 2 groups that are actually here. First, former Mayor Sheets. Mayor Jim Sheets is here this evening. Mayor, please raise your Quincy College government class, so thank you all for attending, and we'll try to make this as painless a class as possible for you. Also here this evening is Troop 42 out of Quincy getting their government badges, and so at this time I would like to call Noah McFarland forward. Noah? Oh, right to the wall.
Will you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good job, Noah. Thank you very much. And thanks to 42 for being here. At this time, I'd like to ask the clerk to read the open meeting law, please.
Thank you. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Madam Clerk, if you'll start with our agenda this evening.
Sure. Number 1 on the agenda, 2016-271. Upon the request of Mayor Thomas P. Cove in the sum of $1,888,627 is hereby appropriated for the following purposes. A, community preservation.
Motion for the reading. Council Crowell.
Thank you very much, President Hughes. This is an annual exercise that essentially funds the CPC budget. I did check with the auditor, and she verified that indeed is what it is. So with that, I would move approval.
Motion to approve by Council Crowell, seconded by Councilor Devana. Anyone wishing to speak on the motion? Councilor Calhoun.
Do we have a representative here from the CPC to make a presentation on the projects?
I
Past?
don't believe we do this evening. The mayor's representative is going to speak on this.
Reading, Madam President, this is the pre-project vote of the council. This is it just puts the money into the buckets. The projects haven't been selected. The applications aren't due yet. This is the pre-process that we do annually that just allocates the money in the right buckets for tax recap setting and financial purposes, council.
So it's more, we're not necessarily setting the amount. The amount is dictated by statute. We're kind of more or less declaring into which of the 3 areas that it's going.
Correct, council. There are 3 I think it's the for each of the individual categories, and then the rest goes into a reserve fund. And then subsequent to that, the committee goes through the process, makes its recommendations on specific projects. The mayor orders and issues an appropriation, and that's when we have the discussion about the projects.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification.
Thank you, Councilor Calhoun. Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to speak? All right. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Cole.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Lillian.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes. 9 members.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next item.
Next item, number 2 on the agenda, 2016-272.
Motion waive the reading by Councilor Crowell. Councilor Crowell.
Again, the standard exercise, they come in with a line item, verified by the auditor.
Okay.
So, move approval.
All right, motion approved by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Kane. Anyone wishing to speak on the motion? All right, Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Council Kane.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council Vaughn.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFars.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
And the next item, Madam Clerk.
Number 3 on the agenda, 2016-273, adopting housing development incentive program, plan and zone. There is a representative, Rob Marlowe, here to speak.
Hello, Mr. Mallow. How are you?
Good evening, Madam President and members of the council. My name is Robert Mallow. I am a principal planner in the planning department, and tonight I will discuss the Housing Development Incentive Program. So with the passage of the Quincy Housing Production Plan in October of 2016, that affirmed Quincy's commitment of creating housing opportunities for current and future residents of all abilities, incomes, and household types. Housing Production Plan's goal is to focus on 4 main tenets: achieving and maintaining the Chapter 40B 10% goal, identifying appropriate development sites and addressing blight, creating incentives and leveraging existing city resources, and supporting affordable, diverse, and quality housing opportunities. So tonight, we are asking the City Council to approve a housing development plan and zone in a designated area of Quincy Point that would achieve these goals. The housing development plan and zone are under the auspices of what's called the Housing Development Incentive Program. This is a program that was established under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, as in Victor, and recently enhanced through 2 pieces of state legislation centered on advancing economic development. Provides gateway cities such as Quincy with a tool for promoting housing development and neighborhood revitalization. The HDIP, as it's called, creates access to state and local tax incentives to sponsors that undertake redevelopment of properties to create market rate housing in a designated area. Program participation requires the designation of a zone where these incentives can be accessed and the creation of a plan that identifies the objectives and potential projects within that zone. The incentives within that housing development zone are twofold. Sponsors of qualified projects may access state funding of up to $2 million per project. And secondly, a local real estate tax exemption on all or part of the increased property value resulting from improvements at the site. The exemption would not be less than 10% or more than 100% of those improvements. The term would not be less than 5 years or more than 20 years. Most importantly, the terms of each project would be approved on a case-by-case basis. What the HD or Housing Development Plan and Zone does not do is change any existing zoning or any other city ordinance, either in the zone itself or in the city. The plan itself does not approve a specific development project, nor does it approve any tax exemption on a specific development project. And finally, approval of the zone does not entitle a developer to the requisite special permits, zoning relief, or any type of variance request that is needed for a particular project, if any request or any variance at all is needed.
So the proposed zone is called the East Howard Street Corridor Zone. Just to orient everyone on the location of the zone, it is located in Quincy Point on East Howard and Winter Streets next to the Fort River Shipyard. North, the zone is highlighted in blue. North is Washington Street, east is the shipyard area, and south is Quincy Avenue. The rectangle in the middle is the zone itself. The zone consists of 4 parcels of land. It's approximately 150,000 square feet. And here are the objectives that we hope to have completed within the zone. The zone is intended to encourage mixed-income residential growth. So this is market rate housing, but also workforce housing affordable to low and middle income households. The zone hopes to achieve a diversity in housing stock so as to attract downsizing older adults and young adults entering the workforce, something else that the housing production plan spoke about in great detail about the need for housing opportunities for many different segments of Quincy's population. An objective is to support economic development, to retain and attract skilled workforce, and access to financial education and job training through existing nonprofit support networks. An objective is to promote neighborhood stabilization, reducing blight and removing vacant property that's located currently within the zone, and create connectivity and walkability in the neighborhood, and create a cohesive neighborhood that's seen recent investments. And finally, to attract future private investment. These are just photos of the 4 parcels that are currently in this, would be in this zone. So we believe that the Housing Development Incentive Program, again, a state program, is a great fit for this area. This image shows the number of different and recent public and private investments and public-private partnership investments made in the area. Projects approved in this particular zone will continue that momentum of those investments, which include the creation and preservation of over 700 units affordable to seniors, families, veterans since 2010. This area was also identified as an area appropriate for housing development at Housing Production Plan community meetings. Currently, the neighborhood market rents in this area don't support the cost of new construction for market rate units. One proposed project at this time aligns with numerous goals of the Quincy Housing Production Plan and the actual Housing Development Plan brought before you tonight. The Watson project will create 140 new residential units, which will provide housing to a diverse demographic in both market rate and price restricted formats. 80% of the units will be price restricted so as to be affordable as workforce housing for middle and low income households. There's a breakdown on the presentation of the number of units for how they would be reserved or based on income. The project would also reduce blight by removing an existing vacant property which comprises the majority of the zone and increase the city's subsidized housing inventory to almost that 10% threshold. Here's a design of the proposed project. It has street level presence and again reduces blight by removing an existing vacant property. And it would be a project of this kind that we would hope is created under this zone to help revitalize the immediate area. I have the timeline in the process. The plan itself was developed between a few months, August through October. The planning board approved the plan at a public hearing in November. We are before the city council tonight And our goal is to submit the plan to the state before or on December 13th, so as to ensure that we have the plan in place, and anything that follows would be able to seek its necessary financing. I would again like to reiterate that approval of the plan and zone tonight is just that. It is not for any specific project. If the plan is approved, it would authorize the city to negotiate a project-specific tax increment exemption agreement, which would then have to be brought before the city council itself to be approved. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman.
Mr. Morrow, I just wanted to clarify one thing that's interesting, is that you said that this isn't specifically tied to a project. I think what you're intending to say is that there's nothing that you do say specifically that's approving any tax relief for a specific project. But clearly, this has been developed with the concept that there's some projects in mind, right? I just want to be clear.
That is correct. Approval of this plan would not approve any tax agreement for any project.
But in reality, for the projects that are being planned there in the future, specifically, not so much for how it relates to this body, but how it relates to certain specific state resources, is kind of critical, because this opens us up to additional resources around the concept of workforce housing development, correct?
That's correct. The state has, through this particular program, set aside $2 million per project. In addition, to create that workforce housing, the state has made available over $100 million throughout the Commonwealth in a very competitive manner, meaning that projects have to apply competitively to create that middle-income housing.
And I know that they've been working, and I don't want to speak to the ward counselor, but again, I mean, there are specific plans, in other words, that this is a critical component moving forward to have this particular piece to achieve what they would like to achieve.
That's correct. If the plan is approved, that will certainly help the project retain or actually have commitments from other financing sources, from the state and from private banks.
Any attempt to do any other type of incremental tax financing thing would require that project to come back before us, correct?
That's correct. Any amendments to this plan would require city council approval.
For a specific project, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, President Hughes. Through you, Mr. Morrow, nice to see you this evening. I just want to publicly say that you are an asset inside of that planning department, and having no interaction with you leading up to this project and this discussion. I just want to commend you on your professionalism and really your knowledge as it relates to this type of information. Being a ward council, and just to present some perspective to my fellow colleagues, we spent a very long time on this project with a former applicant, making sure that it was a responsible growth project, that it would fit inside of the neighborhood. And I think most importantly, working hard on behalf of the residents to make sure that there was some safeguards embedded into the permit. And I feel like we achieved that. Before I get too far into it, I did receive a piece of communication part of the public record, which actually was addressed to President Hughes as well as all members of the City Council. It says, "My name is Sean Callahan. I live at 116 South Street, Quincy, Massachusetts. I'm also the business agent for Local 103. Unfortunately, my schedule prohibits me from attending this evening's City Council meeting. However, I would like to express my support for order number 2016-273. It is my firm belief that creating a housing development plan and zone for this section of East Howard Street will only benefit the city of Quincy. In addition to creating much-needed market rate/workforce residential units, it will help stimulate a section of Quincy that definitely needs it. As a resident of Ward 2 and a neighbor to the project, I feel it is long overdue. In addition, the project owner, NeighborWorks, has committed to use an electrical contractor on this project that buys by community standards, one that provides employees with livable wages, health insurance, and a retirement benefit. I urge you to vote in favor of this amendment. Thank you for your consideration. And I read that into the record specifically because when we were navigating through this conversation, gee, it must have been, it was like 2 years ago, potentially. It's been a long road, but that was one of the concerns and metrics that we put in place, was to create local jobs, to make sure that the people working on this particular project, were being paid a fair wage. So I'm glad to hear that those conversations will continue to move forward with NeighborWorks. And as it relates to them, I mean, they have done a phenomenal job of literally transforming the standard for the corridor. I mean, I could point to several projects, and I know you could as well, but the good news with this entity is they're located in Quincy Point. They have an existing portfolio in Quincy Point, and they've shown the ability to bring a project to fruition, a good project to fruition. And in terms of when I think about this project now, we talk a lot about development, and we talk a lot about market rate houses, and we talk a lot about essentially high rentals catered towards folks that we're going to entice to move to Quincy, which I totally support that. But I also realize as a city council, as a ward council, that there's also a subset of folks who are already here and look and want to land in a nice housing complex. And this particular project presents us a diversity of potential suitors to inhabit the space, particularly the workforce housing. Right? Well, needs a median income. We debated this in the housing production plan. The median income being like $61,000. Right? So we're talking about firefighters, and police officers, and teachers, and the folks that are already here. So giving them an opportunity, to your point, to transition and stay here, and also create, what I know this council has debated back and forth, but additional affordable units. If my memory serves correct, you were the one that helped me to sort of put this together. There would be up to a 70% residential requirement into the affordable housing. So
That's correct.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So state law allows a local preference for the affordable units, up to 70% of those units. So backed by state law, but that local preference gives first preference to through water system for those affordable units to Quincy residents.
So we're creating an opportunity with the adoption and implementation of this project for folks currently living in the city of Quincy. To me, that's just so important. And again, I'm thrilled to learn that NeighborWorks will be the individuals moving this forward, and I do think it's a home run for the district. The project is already permitted. Everything that was agreed upon during the pre-permit is going to transfer over. We've had a very candid and straightforward conversation, and I couldn't be anything but supportive of this project. So with that, I move approval.
Okay. Motion approved by Councilor Kroll. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor LaForest. Seconded on the motion.
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to second this motion. I represent this body on the city's Affordable Housing Trust. And Councilor Kroll, I feel like we've been hearing about this particular project for a couple of years that had come through our board in the prior iteration, again, on the NeighborWorks version. And I'm a strong supporter of the NeighborWorks organization. I think, again, we need to talk about this as the HDIP as a district versus specifics as a project, but the two are definitely tied together. I do want to thank the Baker Polito administration for this program and for NeighborWorks for having shovel-ready projects to take advantage of this new funding source. I think one of the things when we talk about affordable housing is that there's often misunderstanding about what that means, whether it's Section 8, whether it's public housing, and what affordable housing is. And this is the target market of the workforce housing for the middle class, as well as for the lowest of income levels, and then the strict market rate. So it really gives us a great blend. I think NeighborWorks has done a fantastic job in my ward, as well as in Council Kroll's ward and others throughout the city, in taking some areas that have some vacancies, that have some blights, and really, I see this project with Watson as a game changer. I do want to give them a shout out for the Watson connecting to the shipyard and keeping that history alive in our community. The other piece of this that I like is on the 10% for the city's 40B threshold. It's not just the lowest income units that are qualifying under the 10%. So can you speak about how we're using this blended income levels and how we're able to capture additional units for our affordable housing count?
Sure. So under the Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, which sets the 10% standard for each community within the Commonwealth, so long as 20% of the units in a rental project, which the Watson would be a rental project, so long as 20% of those units are affordable to households below 50% of area median income, then all of the units in the project count towards a community's subsidized housing inventory.
So when we're talking about how there's different criteria about us meeting our 10% through 40B, this is actually bringing units back online to that count. And just a shout out to, and I believe we have some representatives from NeighborWorks in the audience, but they're one of our CHODOs, as you know, community housing development organizations, and they are a tremendous nonprofit that is pretty quiet about the work that they do. They did Veterans Project in my district, the American Legion Post and C Street House, and Acton converted it to 2 units of housing. They've done so many projects throughout the city. They are a tremendous community partner, and they just are bringing their game to a new level with this big project, and I'm really excited to see this unfold. So, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Councilor Paul.
Just very briefly, I just want to touch upon what Councilor LaForest said, because I think it is so important. When every time we talk about this, she's good for bringing it up, we have to talk about what it is. We're not talking about people without jobs. We're not talking about Section 8. We're talking about people who make less than approximately or around approximately $60,000 or $65,000 or less. What we're talking about is school teachers, firefighters, policemen, civic employees. We're not talking about folks who don't have jobs. And those folks need housing too. But when we're talking about affordable housing, when we're talking about workforce and housing, I don't think we can stress enough that this is who this type of housing is targeted for. It's targeted for people who come between a certain income threshold. And that threshold is around $60,000, $65,000 a year for a household of one. So if we don't do things like this, we're going to have a city that's unaffordable for the people who make the city run. And so I'll certainly support this. I appreciate the hard work that Councilor Kroll has done. I know this is a project that's something he's put a lot of effort into, and I'm happy to support it for the reason that I think if we don't support things like this, if we don't make it a policy goal of the city to encourage and to really do what we can to help grow this type of housing for this demographic, and we're going to be a city where folks who make the city run, who the city depends on, the kind of hardworking folks that you want living in the city, they won't be able to afford it. And other municipalities have gone down this road where it becomes too expensive for the folks who are making under the median income. The folks, like I said, the school teachers, firefighters, police officers, to even live in. And then you're in some real trouble. So I think it's forward thinking that we're moving ahead with something along these lines, and I'm gladly support it. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Palacio. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. So there's a motion on the floor made and seconded by Councilor LaForest. Madam Clerk, will call roll.
Councilor King.
Yes.
Councilor Kroll.
Yes.
Councilor DeBona.
Yes.
Councilor Finn.
Yes.
Councilor Harris.
Yes.
Councilor LaForest.
Yes.
Councilor Yang.
Yes.
Councilor Calhoun.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item number 4, Madam Clerk.
Next on the agenda is 2016-274, adopting percentages of local tax for each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 2017. Assessor Field.
All right. one moment, please. Yes,
Could we,
Councilor Harris.
could we move on, skip and go right to the nominations of the
Okay, so there's a motion to change the order of the
Yes.
agenda, is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay, is there any objection? Okay.
Or I don't think we need to vote.
We don't, okay. All right, so we will, if you'll just sit. Okay, all right, so, sure, nobody, yes, nobody ever tells me they can't hear me, Mr. Stoples, so that's very interesting, but okay. Nevertheless, as my mother said, is you hear her long before you see her. But anyway, all right, so what we will do is, Mr. Kavanaugh, you'll have just a seat, we'll come back to this agenda item, but I do know that the folks for the park board are here, or expecting to be here, so we will move to, without objection, item number 8, Madam Clerk.
Item number 2016-278, order nomination for Parks and Rec Board appointment, President Hughes.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilor Calmucci. Councilor Calmucci.
Could I just at the outset, by point of order, there's 2 positions, correct?
Correct, there are 2 positions.
Will there be 2 separate votes?
Yes, so we'll need 2 separare votes, and to remind everyone, you will have to say the name of the nominee in order to vote. Okay? So at this time, we go to Councilor Calmucci.
Thank you. Councilor Flores is attempting to confuse me. I'm going to ignore as best I can. Yes, thank you, Council President. It is my pleasure to nominate, or to place into nomination the name Kevin Esdale for one of the 2 vacancies to the Parks and Rec Board. Kevin is a 4-year president of Quincy Youth Soccer, which brings his total board of director service at Quincy Youth Soccer to 5 years. He's been a volunteer coach with the Quincy Youth Soccer for approximately 7 years. He's been a volunteer coach with Quincy Youth Baseball for 4 years. He's told me that there are times during the season that he spends 7 days a week on those fields throughout the city. I think that he is a fine candidate for this position because he can work well with the leadership of the other organizations and programs who utilize our park. I think he would do a terrific job as a member of the Parks and Rec Board. And most importantly, he's a Ward 4 guy, so you know he's going to be good. With that, I will place into nomination the name Kevin Esdale.
All right, then Kevin Esdale has been nominated. Councilor Calmucci, is there a second? Okay, seconded by Councilor Kroll.
I move to close nominations.
Okay, nominations will be closed at this time, if there is no objection. Okay, so we'll close nominations for this particular position. And again, as the clerk calls the roll, please remember you have to say the name Kevin Esdale. Madam Clerk.
Councilor King.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Crowe.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor DeBona.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Finn.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Harris.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Clark.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Leeang.
Kevin Esdale.
Councilor Calmucci.
Kevin Esdale.
President Hughes.
Kevin Esdale.
9 ayes.
Thank you. Well, congratulations to Kevin, and I know he'll do a fine job on the park board. At this time, there is a second position on the park board. I would like to, okay, I thought you were motioning.
No, I was pointing.
I'd like to make a motion at this time to nominate Thomas Lester. And again, in following the tradition of Councilor Calmucci, Mr. Lester is a Ward 5 resident who has served the community in many ways, and was only too happy to be interested in giving back to his city through the park board and through contributing to the city's youth. And I feel confident, not only because he's a great guy, but also because he is from Ward 5. In his abilities to serve on the park board. So it is my pleasure to place in nomination the name of Thomas Lester. Yes, Councilor Finn.
This is a complete surprise to me in many respects, but I don't know if is somebody going to second that, because if they're not, I would love to second it.
Please do, Councilor Finn.
Tom, we find a lacrosse guy on the park. Tom Lester single-handedly preserved, in many respects, lacrosse in the city of Quincy by a number of years of just dedicated service in relation to that. And of course, we all know him again with his contributions to hockey, and to athletics generally, and all the time it's always been about the young people who are engaged in that. And again, this was a total surprise this evening. I did not know he was a nominee. I should have probably been promoting or pushing such a nomination myself. But I have to say, it is really a great honor to be able to second his nomination. And I know, based on his work ethic, what contribution he'll make to that body. So it's an honor to second the nomination.
All right, great. Thank you, Councilor Finn. All right, at this time, I call nominations closed if there is no objection. Seeing none, we'll call this nominations closed. And remember, when the clerk calls you, you have to say the name Thomas Lester. So, Madam Clerk?
Counselor King.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Crowe. Counselor Vaughn.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Finn.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Harris.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Corr.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Liang.
Thomas Lester.
Counselor Calmucci.
Thomas Lester.
President Hughes.
Thomas Lester. All right, great. Well, welcome aboard, Mr. Let's just say hello and thank you. Good luck, and we look forward to the great things that you and Mr. Esdale are going to do on the park board. So thank you very much. All right. Okay. All right. I think what we're going to do is have you connect with the clerk regarding follow-up after this evening, unless you wanted to come up and say a few words or, did you? No. Okay, I don't see anybody. Okay, they're not the park people. They're not microphone people. Got it. Okay. All right, thank you. So the clerk will give you a ring tomorrow and talk about swearing in and all that good stuff. So thank you. All right, we will go back to our previously scheduled programming, and we will pick it up with Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Madam President, councilors. I'm very happy to report that we have successfully completed the collection of all data necessary for the submission of the tax rate recap pending your approval tonight. We've also received certification from DOR on all of our property values, which was reported earlier by the assessor. I'd also like to take a second to thank Colleen Healy and her staff. They didn't come into this cycle with a lot of experience. I think they're leaving with a lot of experience, and I can't wait to see what they can do next year with 1 year under the belt. We have two options to present for you to look at tonight. Option one, which we'll refer to, contains a lot of the information that's also applicable to option two, as far as residential values in the city, how they've increased so much. And another big factor is the snow and ice access. So that also applies to both options, and whichever you choose as an impact throughout. Now, as noted on the slide, our free cash was certified on November 15th by DOR. And I'd like to take a second to thank our auditors, Susan O'Connor, as always. The work with DOR is invaluable. They love you, so do we. Can't do it without them. Property tax levy.
One second, Mr. Kavanaugh, point of order.
I just have to use the men's room. I came back and there's an order on my desk. I missed the, it doesn't
No, I
have
think
the
it's
order
just,
number.
we have not talked about the order yet.
Okay.
It's just been placed on here.
Okay, all right.
We haven't talked about it yet. No.
But we will.
Oh, we will. We haven't talked about it.
So let me further inquire on what it is. So is this properly before us? I don't recall receiving this prior to tonight.
No,
I
you did
don't
not.
see it in the
No.
agenda.
No.
So this is all new?
All new, right now,
Okay,
as we speak.
all right.
And I believe there is a motion coming, but it's just for your reference at the
So
moment.
no one's asking us to act on this tonight?
I don't know, there may be somebody asking you to act on it this evening, but nobody's asked you to do anything with it yet. It's just at your seat
Okay.
for right now.
So we haven't even technically received this yet?
No, you physically, technically received it, but it has not been taken under discussion by body.
I can ask through you to the clerk, what council order number is this?
It hasn't got one because it just came before us.
Great, thank you. All set?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the property, the 2017 property tax levy under this initial option that we're considering here comes in at $217,399,320. That would work out to an average single-family bill tax increase of 8.72%, or about $460. This will also result in excess levy capacity of $18,020,407. Key factors. There are many key factors that go into the calculation of total tax levy, and of course all of you will be aware. And we'll look at all the major ones. The first key component for you to consider, and we'll present the detail on this as well, and it applies to both options 1 and 2, and it's plural deficits. They're from winters past, namely 2015, which was the 100-year storm. 2016, we also had a deficit. There's also a positive implication for the 2018 tax rate, which could come from the third year of the amortization snow deficit, and we'll discuss that shortly. The above slide represents a graphic illustration of the major components of the levy increase. The next slide is a listing of those. I do a little bit better with the listing because I'm colorblind. What's causing the levy increase? 28% of the levy increase is just from the snow and ice deficit, and that's without using a free cash offset under option 1. Option 2. Option 1. I confused myself. The remaining factors of the levy increase would be 20% from education spending, 13% from police and fire spending, DOR lumps the two into public safety, 7% mandatory increase in retirement contributions, 6% mandatory health insurance costs, the remaining 25% mostly contractual salary increases or union contracts, which go across virtually all departments. I'd like to spend a minute on what isn't causing the levy increase. I mentioned that there are many factors in the calculation of the levy. Some of those factors obviously much more significant than others in driving the number. Generally speaking, operational costs, certain operational costs are not driving this number. That's not to say these aren't important. They each deserve attention and discussion. All of you are asked to make votes throughout the year. Appropriations are proposed. Certainly, that's a correct time to be addressing any and all of the factors. Nothing's considered small, but these numbers are what they are. Debt service had a net reduction of $225,000 between 16 and 17, so certainly that's not driving a levy increase. Non-contracted salary increases were 0.3%, or less than a third of a percent. That's $1.27 in the option 1 plan, so not driving the number. New positions in the budget would be 2.26%. The snow and ice deficit, the major factor, as I had said, is the tax levy increase. The original DOR amortization plan, which came out after the winter of 2015, was a 2 or 3 year option for cities and towns. But they also allowed for the taking of the 3-year option to start, and then cities had the option to convert it to just a 2-year plan if they were able to eliminate the 3rd year debt early. That's the option we were advised to look closely at by our financial advisors. The existing free cash for 2017 would be used to eliminate the third year of the debt in the second year. But that would be done after the setting of the tax rate. We would not be using free cash in the first option to offset the 2017 levy. We'll go into more of this. Snow and ice amortization. We'll be raising $4.4 million in the 2017 tax levy towards our snow and ice deficits generated from the winter of 2015. That's the amortized second year of the installment on the schedule, $3.7,707,000. And in addition to that, in the 2017 levy, we had a snow ice deficit in the winter of 16 last year of $763,311. That's a total of $4.4 million, and that must be cleared on this year's tax rate. The second element, which is important for tax planning, is that there's still that third year of amortized snow and ice deficit, and we're obligated to deal with that, originally scheduled in the plan in 2018. The original schedule approved was for 3 years, $3.7 million per year. However, as I said, that allows for cities and towns to eliminate the third year. They kind of left the back door open. If you're able to pay it off earlier, then I encourage you to do so. On advice of our financial advisors and the rating agencies, we determined that we should consider to take care of this deficit a year early by a use of a portion of the $4.8 million in free cash after tonight's 2000 tax rate is settled. We would eliminate the third year of the deficit between the tax rate setting if you vote on it tonight and by the end of the year. That would eliminate raising an additional $95 in 2018. It would be ahead of the game next year under that option. Let's move over to talking tax from total levy of $213 million under option 2 or $217 million under option 1 to the compilation of the tax bill. The addition you see in this graphic is different from the first one. It is the inclusion of the residential burden shift. Now, you hear the residential burden shift over and over. It's a huge part of this. This is the amount that is shifting from the commercial base to the residential base to the market values in Quincy as certified by the DOR through the assessment. This is not a policy decision. This is a reflection of the free market. We don't control this shift. It's values increasing on the residential side, which the auditor report was over 9%, versus values on the residential side 9%, the commercial side about 3%. That creates a shift. The 50%, as we just reviewed, is a combination of the residential burden shift and snow and ice effects. The rest of the department percentages are spelled out, and you can see those percentages on the screen. To this, we can add the fact that 70% of the budgetary increases are from union contractors. Let's talk a little bit about the residential shift, because we've all heard enough about it, but we need to nail it down and make sure we understand. As residential values increase, they make up a larger portion of the total levy, total property value of the city. This increases their share of the levy. As I said, as the assessor reported, residential growth this year 9%. That outpaces commercial growth of 3%. That means a burden shift, raising the levy falls more to the residential side. Again, that's the marketplace. Now, the reverse is also possible. It just hasn't happened in recent years. In fact, I don't think it's happened. But when commercial growth does outpace residential, there'll be a shift back. More of the commercial base will take on more of the raising of the levy, and the residential side will get a break. Talking a little bit more about Quincy's residential value, the emphasis here is how Quincy compares to Massachusetts as a whole. 3-year average growth in Massachusetts is 1.9%. Quincy's average growth is 8.7%, 4 times the state average in Quincy. We rank 7th in value growth out of 351 cities and towns. But as you know, Comes along with that good news is a residential burden shift. The next slide shows more of the exceptional growth in residential values in Quincy. The communities selected here are in a certain proximity to Boston. And what this is called is, take a note, monocentric growth. And you think I knew that before Eric Mason came on the stage? Thank you, Eric. Monocentric growth is that we're all benefiting from the boom that's happening in Boston. I know I saw it just last week on Market Watch that Boston was identified as the #1 growth city east of the Mississippi. We're benefiting in the other communities on the graph, almost in an identical fashion, have benefited over the last 3 years. That's the boom effect from proximity to Boston. The next slide shows more of the residential property shift. It goes over a longer period of time. This is not a recent phenomenon. This shows $2 billion in growth over the last 5 years in Quincy. And that works out to, just for the 2017 tax rate, a $107 increase in the average single-family tax just from residential burden. Let's talk about levy capacity before we get down to talk a little bit about summaries on the options. The increase in the total levy for 2017 still leaves us with over $18 million in excess levy capacity, and that's an indication of strong financial health, and that's still referring to option 1. I'll give the numbers on option 2 as well. What is excess levy capacity? That's the DOR's term for the amount of money the city or town is below the legally allowed tax limit. Or stated another way, it's the amount of money the city could have taxed under Proposition 2.5, but chose not to. That is a policy decision. The move from 23 million in excess levy capacity down to 18 is also viewed as a strong positive by the rating agencies. They asked for a commitment from us to tap into the excess levy capacity last June during our ratings call. We deferred, we said we'd look at it closely. That's what we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, and we've come to a couple of options for you to consider. Both options reduce the excess levy capacity. One goes a little bit further. We're only talking about the use of free cash in this tax rate. A summary of option, the historic excess capacity. How long has this been going on? We see a significant trend since 2010 of amounts of money that the city could have taxed, which did not. If you add it all together, it totals $140 million since 2010. That gives excess levy capacity. That would translate into $3,500 on the average single family home. And legally could have been taxed under Proposition 2.5. Policy decisions made not to. Something that's significant as far as decisions made in previous tax rate setting sessions. Let's go to a summary of options 1 and 2. Some of these apply to both, but in smaller percentages. 2 main factors in the 17 levy: the residential burden shift and snow and ice deficits. 50% of the average single-family tax bill are those 2 items: residential burden shift, snow deficit. The remaining large department increases is education, which you all know is the school budget, public safety, which is police and fire, plus the retirement contribution, which is mandatory, and health insurance, also mandatory, are another 23% of the increase. So those 3 categories are in general the grouping of large departments, burden shift, and snow and ice. We're at 73% of the increase on a tax bill. The remaining budgetary increases account for 27% of the total. And of that 27%, 70% are union contracts. I don't think anybody thinks we've given away the store on union contracts. They've been reasonable, the city's been reasonable. I think we're talking 1, 2, 2 in the groups that have already agreed. As we've been advised, the use of cash, free cash, towards paying down the tax rate, it's a good tool, but it should not and cannot be used every single year. We have used it recently. We've used it 4 out of the last 5 years. It does good things for us when it's used. Counterbalance to that is it inhibits our ability to increase savings, increase our reserves. And that's where we're being criticized by the rating agencies, and that's why the financial advisors are saying, don't use free cash every year. When we look at option 2, free cash would come out at 1.168,928. That's down from the 4.8 million. The reason being is that we would use $3.7 million of this year's appropriation, and we would pay that off with free cash this year as part of the tax rate setup. The property tax levy would reduce from 217 million previously to 213 million. The average single-family tax bill will increase by 6.87% under option 2 with the use of the free cash from the previously 8.7% without the use of free cash. In dollar values, we'd be going from 460 under the first option without free cash. It would be reduced to 356.94 with the use of free cash. Excess levy capacity, we'd still be reducing it as we've been advised to do. It would only reduce from 23 million in 16 down to 21.7 in 17. Final summary, if the city uses 3.7 million in free cash to reduce the average single-family tax bill, the tax bill would increase by 6.87%, $356 increase from 16. The city would not pay off the third-year payment of the snow and ice amortization early. With the use of free cash, the average single-family tax bill would increase 1.73% from option 2. Option 2 would also cause an increase in the 2018 tax bill by $95. That said, there's 2 options in front of you. If this body has an appetite to vote for and utilize the free cash, I have an order ready to pass out to you and enter into the body, and it will go in as the mayor's recommendation if that is your choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kavanaugh. This time, recognize Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman.
I think it would be appropriate, given the context of this, and with all due respect to my colleague from Ward 6, but can we have the finance chair to address this first and foremost in relation to it?
Sure.
I think that would be appropriate. With all due respect to Mr. Harris, but again, I think it's his work and his advocacy that has these options before us this evening, so I thought it might be good to get some of his comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, okay, sure. Okay, if that's what you want to do, Mr. Harris. Go ahead.
I just want to make it up this evening, and thank you, Madam Chairman, and all the council. And, Mr. Kavanaugh, I appreciate all the work you do as well on behalf of the city. I know that there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of money in motion, there's a lot of projected new growth coming in, and as we were leading up to this evening, I know that we were presented with option 1, which was to essentially take this year's free cash and basically close out the account, or the third year of the account in the snow and ice deficit that we will be, or would be accountable for in year 3, correct?
It was a little bit of a nuance there. It wasn't taking the free cash before the 2017 tax rate was set. DOR requires us to take care of year 2, or the second
Correct.
1.7. We did year 1 last year. We also had the deficit last year of 763, I think. So we add that to it. So we're obligated this year to take care of $4.4 million in 15 and 16 deficit. Once we set that, the back door opening of the DOR amortization plan, which the financial advisors pointed out to us, was that that would give us the ability, if we don't use the free cash on this tax rate, we would still have 4.8 million. Anytime between the setting of this tax rate and the end of this fiscal year, we could allocate 3.707 million of the third year of the deficit, of doing it in 17, and eliminate that third year. The third year is there to deal with us. We have to deal with it one way or the other. If we wait until after June 30th, it automatically goes to the 2018 tax rate, and that increases that about $95 out of the box. So it was just a way to say to cities and towns, you can opt into the program, and you can opt in at 1 year or 2 years. Some went 2 years right away, smaller towns. We had a significant liability. We spent $13.7 million, $2 million budget. We were left with 11.7 to deal with. Certainly, you don't want to raise 11.7 million in one budget. We opted for the 3-year option. I can't say we were planning ahead, thought we'd have enough money to take care of it in year 2. It turns out we're certified at 4.8. That option opened up for us, and the advisors pointed out that we'd be better served to use the free cash. It's only a paper transaction. Free cash is on paper. There's no money in the bank. All the snowplow drivers, the truck haulers, they were paid in 2015. The amortization program is on paper only. It allows us to set the tax rate using the 3.7 million this year, or you can let it keep going to 2018. If we pay it early, no cash going out, our fund balances stay high, our reserves stay high. The net result is our stabilization, our reserves, our fund balances are where the rating agencies want us to be. If we spend it this year, the opposite's true. So they'll give us the evil eye that we didn't do what we could have done. But that's a strictly financial look towards the future. It doesn't have the other ramifications that you folks have.
And I can appreciate that. A couple things come to mind, and as I progressed through my thought process, because I wasn't aware of option 2, although in my mind, coming in here, I thought that option 2 would be a more viable option, seeing the cost-benefit analysis today for the taxpayer, which they're facing essentially an increase in their valuations, right, which is great for the city and good for the homeowner, but tough if you're not necessarily looking to liquidate your investment and move on, right? Essentially, your house has gone up, your tax on your house has gone up, and it's invested equity into your investment. So I can appreciate the idea of taking a financial advisor's advice. I mean, I've sat up here long enough to know that they've also made other recommendations to us to do, such as beefing up stabilization and aggressively attacking OPEB. So, the thought about we need to do this now, for me, I'm not as convinced with that, respectfully. I know that there was and I wasn't aware of the payoff, the early payoff nuance that existed, because I remember that once upon a time there was an order introduced at the city council that basically allowed us to enter the 3-year state amortization program, which we
You
did.
could enter 2 or 3, and then they had that little clause. If you're in year 2 and you want to pay it off early, that option is available.
So that was in it, because, I mean,
That was in the original.
it will always be a style preference, right, in terms of a conversation, call it, right? It's paid off now, or paid off
A lot
later.
of this, councilor falls off of the fact that they think the use of free cash is something that should be done periodically. When you use free cash, 2 years, 3 years in a row, around 5, it inhibits your ability to put money in those fund accounts that you mentioned. It inhibits your ability to save for the future because you're paying off immediate things. So they're looking towards our fund balance and saying, you have the wherewithal to eliminate that 3rd year early. That's what we recommend to you. And that's just standalone financial people looking at our statement and saying you should do that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that sentiment. But when I process it just as an everyday citizen, to say to myself, okay, we are in a position to either raise year two's snow and ice deficit through taxation, or utilize a free cash flow revenue stream to offset it now, versus, right, you raise it through taxation this year, and you take that money from free cash, and you pay off year three. When I think about a year three payoff, it's not an interest-free loan, but it's a close cousin. We're not paying any interest on amortization.
No, it's on paper only.
It's on paper only, so we carry it as an account, but certainly can be addressed down the road. It's not necessarily, it's a liability, but it's not an interest-bearing
I
liability.
guarantee you we'll address it down the road. It's paying now or paying later.
So, as I process that, I mean, for me financially, I see the value to the taxpayer who is experiencing a valuation increase in their home, to maybe pass on a little bit of the savings. But, I also realize when I read in the option 2 piece where it says option 2 will cause an increase in the 2018 tax bill, which you and I can both agree, right? You're going to pay 95 this year, or you're going to pay 95 next year. But the reality is we're going to go before the DOR next year, and we're going to get recertified for free cash. And I don't know what the historical certifications have been over the last 5 years, but I'm gonna put forth a guess and say it's probably anywhere between 3.5 and 5 million, roughly.
Yeah, based on our average, that's a good ballpark.
Right? So we will have free cash to essentially close out that account next year. But, and I was reading it, and kudos to Assessor Healy, who took the initiative to reach out and engage us pre-meeting. I think that's, a good way of doing business. So, kudos to you. But I also realized in that slide deck, there were several projects that we profiled that showed new revenues coming into the city. And the part that I didn't follow as much is that they'll break those down, those new revenues, or those anticipated new revenues, into quarterly payments and pass that along to the taxpayer.
Sure, that'll be new growth.
Right? So I had reached out proactively to Assessor Healy, and she was kind enough to provide me with a spreadsheet, a rough estimate of what we'd be looking for in terms of new construction growth. I heard the gentleman in the audience here this evening talk about the overall units that have been permitted. My best frame of reference was provided by the planning department, which was 2,653 new units permitted in the city of Quincy. The revenue projections that I got from the assessor only told a little bit of the story, and I understand why, because those things probably aren't fully online and being fully taxed at their new assessed valuations. But my point is, getting back to option 2, you're going to say we have a $95 obligation next year if we take and use free cash this year, right?
Correct.
But if you really, really look at it, and you think about it, I hear it from residents, and we all hear it from residents, all this new construction and the traffic and the parking and the disruption, and the part of creating a new economy inside of an economy, the benefit to the taxpayer is net new growth. So if you manage the budget and budget appropriately and conservatively, and this is my opinion, you should be able to use that net new revenue and probably cover that debt obligation straight up in year 3. You wouldn't even have to use free cash.
That would be the plan that we would hope for, yes. The immediate reverse effect, I don't want to be, that our immediate cash reserves, fund balances, those go down. And that's what they're kind of pointing the gun at us now, saying we need to increase those now.
So
You've heard that term before, so from the radio.
no, and you know what? They're doing their job, and they're
Absolutely.
taking a third-party, consultative, independent approach and saying, I don't know what you guys are doing, but here's what the numbers say. Financial principles are about math, and you know that. You're a CPA, so I respect that. I'm just a common folk from Quincy, but I also understand that, and this is important, particularly for the new councilors, that the tax rate is essentially, the aggregate of the budget that you pass and every appropriation that you pass along the way brings you to December 5th, 2016, with one exception, the policy decision or the policy shift that's before us. Take option 1, or take option 2. So just to be clear with the committee here this evening, I believe those are the 2 avenues presented. And just for my own sake of, I don't want to say venting, but I know that this was brought up in the budget season. And I know you're a very bright guy in the department, is very, and so I know that you guys are doing forecast modeling. I know that that's happening. But one of the questions to come out of the budget process is, how can we anticipate policy shifts like this? I mean, basically I saw the new position, the appointed positions are going to increase in a 2.6% hike.
2.6%.
Right. Yep, it's fine, but the math is good to know going into budget season, not in the 9th inning, a week before the numbers are due to the DOR.
Well, we used to do it that way, and we would have strongly advised to get out of the projection business. So much goes into the tax rate recap, so much goes into the assessor nailing down her values. And we did finish on time this year. I think Colleen completed her target date of September 15th. So much goes into that, and then the compilation of the data over the next 6 weeks so that we can start to get models on tax rates. The thought of doing it in the spring is unimaginable to me. You're throwing out a dart at a dartboard, and you might get reasonably close, but there's so much that's going to happen after that, and I would hate to go back to those days.
Okay. No, and that's fair, but I would have to think that, an overall budgetary increase of 3%, right? Barring any appropriation, you should have an idea as to where, right, so those votes, if the goal, you should have an idea in terms of where it's going. When it hits the consumer. You should. We should, right? I mean, an idea.
I don't want to go back to those days where many were saying, I think we're going to have a $250 increase. That's there's way too many variables in that.
There is, for sure. No, I agree with things happen, and totally agree with you. But, the reality is this, the city of Quincy, my experience, living here, and the folks that I represent, are working class people. They go to work every day, they do the best that they can, and they take their financial gain and probably pay the biggest investment that they'll ever make in their life, which is their home. So as a city councilor, I know for a fact that, those are the people that I'm representing. So when I'm out there, questioning differences in style, I'm doing that with the people that I represent, best interest of mine. And I know we're all doing that, but that's the things that keep me up. You can ask my wife.
That's true. We put the 2 options out, but let me reiterate, I have a standing order that could go in tonight, and that would go in as the mayor's recommendation, if this body so chooses, if that's the appetite that you have, the way you'd like to go, we introduce that order, and you can go ahead with the plan, option 2.
What brought forth option 2? It's coming in here tonight, we're looking at option 2.
I think there were conversations between the mayor and members of the body that the appetite might be for doing what had been done in the past versus the financial advisors trying to say, I think you should go the other way. So he's willing to consider it and open the discussion.
And I'm going to relinquish because I'll probably come back, but my message of reality as I see it is we may have a $95 obligation next year, or we have more than enough revenue projected to come in to service, new revenue coming in to service that. So I don't see it as an Achilles heel about taking, quote unquote, option 2 this evening. I actually think you give the residents, the citizens of Quincy, a break with basically a $100 reduction. And that's.
I'm not arguing.
Right, I know you're not arguing. I'm just articulating that when I read we're going to be on the hook for $95 next year. It's true, but if we budget and we're conservative and we put a face to every single dollar, $95, we will meet and exceed that goal. Thank you.
Councilor Harris, you ceded your time to Councilor Coral.
Thank you. hearing my colleague, I'm just looking back at the sheet and the slides that we saw earlier. And I see three sections, the top 6 of the 11 from my ward. And I heard from my board most of the weekend and part of this afternoon. And we'll just take, for instance, the top one is Squantum. I live in Squantum. I would accept and enjoy the fact that my property is going up. But there are folks that are on fixed incomes that live in Squantum. No matter what anybody wants to say about how the people in Squantum, they're wealthy, they're not. They're not all. There are folks, seniors on fixed incomes. That's why I'm proposing. That's why I'm going to, because $95 is a lot of money to those folks. And I'm making a motion to pass the free cash portion of the $3.7+ million to offset the 2015 snow and ice deficit. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion, all right, so let's
To
clarify.
put into play the second option that was presented to us.
All right, so we need to number that order then. Is that properly? I'm gonna go to the clerk on this one to see what might be properly for us.
It wasn't seconded.
No, I just want to make sure that, wait a minute. So, does he have to make a motion to accept this order that's before us? And then it gets amended?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so you made a motion. Is there a second? Okay, motion made by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor Finn. And so this will now be Councilor
motion?
Yes, Councilor Calhoun.
The motion was what? Again, I'm unclear.
The motion to accept this order that is before you physically, it does not have a number yet. That's what I was clarifying with the
Right,
clerk.
because it's, so I guess it'd be a point of order, so it's.
I was
there's nothing-
attempting to do that, but.
Right, perhaps through you to the clerk. There's nothing on the agenda about using $3.7 million of free cash prior to this evening. There's nothing in the calendar, nothing pending in any committee, and nothing on the agenda for this evening. So my question to you is, I understand the motion and it's been seconded. There's nothing in the council order of business for $3.7 million. And no councilor can initiate spending. Only the mayor can initiate spending. The mayor sets the agenda, and through the charter, he can put something on our agenda. But I don't know, I think this would be unprecedented that the mayor would enter an order in the middle of a council meeting through a councilor. That's this, and I don't think he can legally do that, meaning any councilor here, because it's a spending order. If it was something else, any councilor could introduce it. But this is a spending order, it needs to be initiated by the mayor, and therefore would need to be added to the agenda by the mayor, the same way every single other ordinance comes in. So I'd ask you as a point of order, has the council in your experience ever had a measure for spending introduced in the middle of a council meeting?
Council Calhoun, not before me, no. I did look into this.
Could she finish her question? She's responding to me. Can we let her finish? Happy to. Great.
I did look at the city charter, and I did find in section 22, any ordinance, order, or resolution may be passed through all of the states of legislation at one session, provided that no member of the council objects thereto. But if any member of the council objects, the measure shall be postponed for that meeting.
And,
So,
and I would ask you, so I understand that that's a measure that's properly before the council, and in its initial instance, it's going for the full passage to the council. Someone can object to that. But I guess I'm saying the step before something even gets to our agenda, it gets to be entertained by the body, it has to be introduced by the body. This is a spending order. It cannot be introduced by a council order. It can only be introduced by the mayor, and the only statutory way the mayor can introduce something under the charter is through the agenda. So I'm just curious as to how a spending order can be introduced by a councilor in the middle of a meeting.
This doesn't
And
specify,
isn't it a violation of the open meeting law as well? It's not on our agenda.
it doesn't specify anything about the agenda. It just says any ordinance, order, or resolution may be passed through the legislation in one session.
So wouldn't this be a violation of the open meeting law because it's, the public doesn't have, they didn't know it was on the agenda. I didn't know it was on the agenda until I got back to the bathroom. Or I didn't know it was even going to be before us until I got back.
You may object to it if you'd like.
So you're saying it's your determination, it's not a violation of the open meeting law? I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm asking you a question.
I interpret it under section 22 that any order can come in. Maybe perhaps we should yield to the solicitor.
Okay. So, did you have further questions for the clerk?
No, but I'd be happy to hear what the solicitor has to say about
I
it.
don't see the solicitor in the room. Janet Peckin, the assistant solicitor, and Mr. Durkin are both here. I don't know if Mr. Durkin or Ms. Peckin want to address Councilor Calhoun's question.
Madam President, I'm not familiar with what the option 2 exactly does, because I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I don't know what the order would be, but I'm not.
It's a spending order of $3.7 million to use free cash to spend it on paying down the snow and ice deficit. So it's a spending order of $3.7 million with the mayor's name on it.
Yeah, see that?
Yeah. Ignore my secret notes.
Madam President, it does appear to be, in this form, it does appear to be a spending order.
Okay. But that doesn't, yeah, that doesn't, I understand what you're saying. I don't mean to be flip, but that doesn't answer Councilor Calhoun's question.
So the question is it properly before the
Right,
council?
yes, I guess.
I'm not, quite honestly, I'm not sure of the answer to that.
Okay. I don't know if the solicitor was here, but I don't believe he's here. He stepped out for a moment. Okay, so we will put that on hold, Councilor Calhoun. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to that question. Councilor LaForest.
Just thank you, Madam President. On a follow-up to Councilor Palmucci, I'm with Councilor Palmucci that the order is a spending order needs to come in as a separate appropriation to utilize the free cash option. But I believe we could reduce the rate to make the math work, right? So I guess my question would be for the auditor. What are we on a timeline with does DOR dictate our timeline for us setting our tax rate? And does the tax rate need to be set today?
Actually, Councilor, I spoke with the Department of Revenue today. They have advised us that, and they actually sent me an email as well, asking when we are certifying the tax rate, they will be expedited because they do have, even though all the assessor valuations are all certified, once the council approves everything, the DOR will then go over all the numbers on the recap, and that does take some time. According to the DOR, he knew there was a council meeting this evening. I told him that, I didn't know whether it's going to be voted on or not. He suggested not waiting any more than a week. Because if the tax bills are not postmarked by the end of December, it could really be financially detrimental to the city.
So my understanding is tonight, the Council Order 2016-274 is to adopt the percentages. The introducing of the new order using the free cash offset doesn't, we could potentially adopt the percentages this evening based on, adjusting the math to match the free cash offset, correct?
Generally, there would be if you were going to use free cash to reduce the tax rate, there would be a financial order before you. And there is no financial order before you to use the free cash to reduce the tax rate, so to speak.
But, okay,
There's an order before you to use the free cash to clear up the snow and ice.
right, which otherwise was originally introduced to be coming out of the tax rate.
Correct. That
So-
was, can be raised through taxation.
Right, maybe through to Mr. Madam President, to Mr. Kavanaugh. Okay, you're indicating that would be an alternative. So if we need to adopt our rate this evening, we're hearing that we have a timeline that requires us to adopt that rate this evening. We have rates introduced under option 1. If we adjusted the math to meet the same numbers as in option 2, we then would bring back an order on the council agenda relative to the free cash use of funds.
Yeah, I believe you'd have to accept the order on the 3.7 million for us to use, and then that calculation actually goes on to the tax rate recap. We've done a second tax rate recap, which comes out to the $213 million tax levy and a couple of different rates based opposite of option 1. But I think it all hinges on the 3.7 million going through this body first.
Right, I guess it's, can you acknowledge utilizing 3.7 from free cash without it being voted on this evening because of the order, the parliamentary procedure for the order?
I can acknowledge it, but I think it's only legal if the council votes.
So,
I
right.
think only you can appropriate free cash.
No, I understand that we're saying parliamentary procedure, the order's not properly before us to adopt, to amend and accept option 2. And if that's the case, how do we have the alternative option of making the numbers work, adjusting the rates? So, except that the rates, then I guess it doesn't balance. No, it would be acknowledging the money comes later out of free cash to meet the numbers in the rate that we set.
We can adjust the numbers based on that $3.7 million and make all those numbers come out correctly and balanced.
Do we have that before us anywhere this evening if we're looking to adopt the rate and to do it that way?
I just keep hearing the same question. I think it all relates to the 3.7 million. I'm not seeing a different cycle in your question.
Okay, I was trying to give an alternative with the order not being before us. December 12th, we have an ordinance committee meeting. Could we procedurally schedule a special council meeting to then adopt it by then next Monday?
We could do that. I mean, okay, Councilor.
Let's wait for the solicitors.
Hold on one second. We could do that. I know Solicitor Timmons is here. We were looking for an answer. Solicitor Timmons' answer might help inform the conversation going forward. So, Solicitor Timmons, if you'll come to the microphone.
Can we ask a question?
No, I can answer for you. So,
Good evening,
good
Madam
evening,
President.
Council.
Pardon me.
Yes, good
I
evening.
left the chamber for 2 minutes and I understand chaos ensues.
Chaos ensues, that's right. So, Solicitor Timmons, there was an order which was just given to the council this evening. Did you have an opportunity to look at it? Do you know what the order is?
No, is that
Would be a copy of it.
motion?
It's a motion to accept this order. Okay? Do you need a copy of the order? Because the whole basis of Councilor Palmucci's question is that this spends funds, and this was introduced by the council because the mayor did not put it on the agenda this evening. What's the minimum? Wait 1 second. So Councilor Palucci's question is, isn't this a spending order?
All right. I was present in the chamber and heard the motion made by Mr. Harris. And that's what this is, correct?
Yes.
So was that not a motion to amend something? Wasn't that how it was posed?
No, it wasn't.
Okay. This is just a separate and distinct proposal in regard to the budget, is that correct?
To the tax rate.
Madam President.
Right.
1 second, Mr. Timmons. Yes, Councilor Pat.
Through you, President, but perhaps it might, through you to the auditor, I think the auditor can explain the situation, because it's getting more and more confused the longer we go on. What's happened is that the mayor has introduced an order.
Correct.
There was a motion on the part of Councilor Harris that we accept that as being before us. That was what's taking place. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Palucci, what Councilor Palucci is suggesting is that we cannot do that needs to essentially have been on the agenda prior to the meeting. And so the mayor introducing the order at this point is inappropriate. That's what he's suggesting, as I understand it. And so the question is can a motion in order, and excuse me, Madam Clerk, you read from the charter. Can you read that for the solicitor again in relation to this?
Section 22, any ordinance, order, or resolution may be passed through all its stages of legislation at one session, provided that no one of the council objects thereto. But if any member of the council objects, the measure shall be postponed to the next meeting.
So,
Or for that meeting, excuse me.
Understood. Well, first of all, Madam Clerk's the parliamentarian. This is almost more of a parliamentarian question about the appropriateness. But having said that, it's not inappropriate. That's not really a term. It's either consistent with the provisions of the open meeting law, or it is not. And it could be objectionable based on the council rules under Rule 22. If a council wished to object, it would not be violative of the open meeting law if there were some emergency attached to it, or if it could not have reasonably been anticipated at the time when the original agenda was published. Now, when this original agenda was published, as I understand things, there was a proposal for the tax rate submitted by the mayor as part of the agenda. Well, I do know, although I was out today when I came in, the mayor said to me solely in passing that there was a lot of interaction between individual councilors. I know he met with councilors last week. There was a lot of interaction today as well. There were questions about what was going to happen if the rate was set based on what was before you, and that this is a response to that as far as I understand things. That's what apparently occurred here. And the way that the mayor did that, this appropriation or request for appropriation, he's having it put in front of the council through amendment. So, yeah, I would say that given the circumstances, as I understand things, based on the discussion regarding the tax rate that ensued after the agenda went out, that this could properly be before you under open meeting law concepts. But whether under the council's own rules, a member cares to object based on the way this was submitted, that's up to the councilors individually.
Councilor Palucci.
Yes, Jim, what's the mayor's authority to introduce legislation before the body? Where does that stem from?
To
legislation before the body.
I can't hear legislation.
Legislation before the body.
What's the mayor's authority?
Yeah, where does that stem from? He has authority to introduce legislation before the body. He does it on a bi-weekly basis when orders come in from Mayor Cohen. Where does that stem from now?
Under the city charter of Plan A form of government,
And that
which is
also,
in the 50s.
and that gives him the ability to set the agenda. And that's the manner in which he introduces items before the council. He sets the agenda, puts the order into the agenda, and then it's accepted by the council. It's either put in committee or voted on when it comes in on the agenda, correct? That's been the traditional manner in which that's proceeded?
Not really. I mean, this is the
No.
city council meeting. There's an agenda
This one
meeting
is
on
right.
Wednesdays where the president, who sets the agenda for the council, meets with the mayor, and if the mayor has items he wishes to present to the council, that's what's discussed at these agenda meetings.
So the council president sets the agenda for the council meetings?
Well, it's collaborative. It's not one person or another.
I remember watching the council meetings when Bill Failing was was mayor and Councilor Raimondi was president, and there were quite a lot of battles back and forth because the mayor set the agenda. And it was my understanding of the charter that the mayor sets the agenda of the city council.
Well, do you have a particular charter?
I don't. That's,
I mean, I don't think that's been the practice of this mayor. Might have been the practice of the prior mayor, but, I mean, this is a legislative body. You would be setting your own agenda. The school committee sets their agenda. There are particular rules how they do it, but they set it. So, but I think it's more collaborative than one party. I'm quite certain it's not what, the scenario you're speaking to, but I don't have particulars as to why I'm that certain. I'm happy to try to figure
sure,
out.
we'll track that down offline. So what my issue here is that we were literally handed an order from the mayor tonight, halfway through a city council meeting. It wasn't on the agenda, and I understand that. I mean, arguably, it could have been put on the agenda today and made public, as soon as it was realized that there was some emergency. I'm not clear what the emergency nature is to this coming in violation of the open meeting law, given that the auditor just said that we would have at least a week, at most a week, in order to have a special meeting to pass the tax rate. So I'm not certain what the emergency nature becomes, that it would need to happen now, but that's your legal opinion,
I think it's because of the classification. That has to get done.
But
If
the
it
auditor
doesn't, the
said
default is
we have it until the
a
12th.
difficult circumstance.
We have until December 12th to do so.
Okay.
That's what we do. I mean, I think you were outside of the room when she had said that. So I'm not sure what the emergency nature is, but I'll accept that that's
Councilor
correct.
Lynch, I think the auditor wanted to just clarify to you what she said.
I just wanted to clarify that the Department of Revenue would like the matter expedited. I was the one that said, he asked when the next meeting was, other than tonight, and I said the 19th. He said that was really not acceptable to wait until the 19th. I said, what if we had another meeting? He said he would prefer it to get done sooner rather than later, so they could get all the information and review it and get everything approved. The latest that they would be able to look at it is the 12th. So with that would maybe give them enough time, but you are under pressure at the time.
I completely understand that. Just for the record, we got the tax recap at 3 o'clock on Friday. We got it at 3 o'clock, I got it at 3 o'clock on Friday. I'm assuming that's about the same time that everyone else. I sent an email to you, Mark, at noon saying it's mildly absurd that we don't have the tax recap sheet yet, and we're supposed to be voting on this on Monday. And then to add on top of that, there's a new tax recap that I get handed tonight, along with an order. I mean, this really, it pales in comparison to what's been done here before. I get that sometimes we have to act under the gun here, but to have the mayor introduce something, literally introduce something, halfway through a council meeting, that's not on the agenda, that there's no notice to anybody in the public about, That there's no, it got introduced after we had the public hearing. After we had the public come up and speak on the tax rate, the mayor slipped something onto our desk, and now it's being offered up as if this is acceptable that we vote on this tonight. I'm extremely surprised, Mrs. Timmons, that you find that, and I'm choosing my words carefully, but acceptable in a parliamentary manner. Forget about
Well, I
that.
didn't say that. What I told you was this. I didn't say that. I said it's up to you to make that determination, not me. You don't get to ask me. The parliamentarian is the city clerk, and it is up to the members of this body to make that determination. I did not say that, so let's try to keep what happened here
Sure.
accurately portrayed.
But so you're saying this is
And the
properly
mayor is
before us?
reacting, as I know you know, the mayor is reacting to the input that he has received from members about the tax rate. That's all he did. Now, how this came before the body, I'm uncertain. I don't know about it. I know that Mr. Harris asked to be recognized first when this item came on the agenda. So when the matter was called, he asked to be recognized. He tried to introduce it at the first opportunity, and that's procedurally what he tried to do. So, you know, I think the tax rate was, people knew what was what and what was on the record. And the point of the public hearing is for people to provide input, which they did. And this is in part a reaction to input. And it's being submitted for discussion purposes, not for any subterfuge. And by the way, it brings substantial relief. And that's the whole point of it. So, but if in the minds of the members of this body, Rule 22, as your parliamentarian said, if you object, then object to it. And then there'll be consequences that the auditor and the chair of our assessors can help work through the deadline date that we need to pick.
I'll yield to council.
Well, I don't know if you're done.
Council.
Without getting in, I mean, I think my colleague raises process things that are kind of a continuous question that we do have. But I think that we as a body this evening really have to ask ourselves that by moving this even to a week, is the outcome going to be that much different? And it just strikes me that the key component now is, are we going to try to do something that fundamentally gives some relief to the residential taxpayer, which is different than what the mayor had been initially proposing. He's come back before an order. There was a motion to accept and vote on that order as being before us in some way. You know, one of the things during Mark's presentation, Mr. Kavanaugh's presentation earlier, that he said he said it's a question of pay me now, pay me later. And I want to apply here Occam's razor just to get down to the basics. First off, all of this emerged, and the reason why I wanted to recognize Councilor Kroll and again, Councilor Palmucci, a lot of this was based on some of the advocacy that they were moving before this evening. But the bottom line is, pay me now, pay me later. The situation that Mr. Harris describes, and interestingly enough, which was kind of alluded to by the gentleman this evening in his presentation, is the number of people who are on fixed incomes in the city of Quincy, who their only asset is their home, continue to find the growth in taxes on them very difficult. And it's too easy to say, well, go and move or rent or do any of these things, because the market that we exist in, if they choose to remain within Quincy, makes that virtually impossible to do on their fixed income as well. And so then the only other alternatives that we offer are to provide just about all the breaks that we can that are there. But at certain points in time, you know, even to the point of saying for them to just essentially defer it, and of course losing an asset in many respects. This is a small amount, but it's been part of what's happened here is we have often used free cash to give a break to that residential person. And the pay me now, pay me later, right now, for a significant part of our population, the now is really the significant thing. And the later is far lesser for them in many regards. And the question of continuing this, or moving this to another time, or developing a special meeting, at the end, are we going to come to any different conclusion between those two basic options? And I don't think there are that many, unless the finance chair can correct me on that. I think those are basically the options and the choices before us, which were laid out. And, so again, that was part of my reason for supporting the motion that Mr. Harris was bringing before us. I mean, the bottom line is, it's something that shouldn't be, the whole reason, again, when we set and we adopt the percentages by class, and that we adopt the residential factor, is that we're trying to do that, right? We're trying to ease some of that in relation to the residential tax burden here in the city of Quincy. As far as the advice of consultants, let me tell you something. 16 years here, we've been hearing lots of advice from consultants, and the God's honest truth is, we wouldn't have that excess levy capacity we have presently if we were listening to what our consultants told us, right? We would certainly have never, because I don't think a year has gone by when the consultant hasn't said that we should be taxing to the full 2.5%, and we haven't. Why? Because we're trying to give a break to the taxpayer in relation to this. Again, I haven't heard a year go by when we're chastised around the free cash component. So I think, again, I just ask my colleagues, think this through for this evening. I think this is one of the things that kind of works. Again, we could have had that discussion here or whatever, but the bottom line was they raised some real problems and difficulties with the way this was being characterized. I think that one of the discussions that we can have in May is, let's bring those consultants in and talk about how, moving forward, we integrate free cash in the future and the merits and values of that. But I think the points that our chair makes are quite legitimate, and that we can, I would just encourage everyone that we move forward tonight so that we can adopt the percentage classification and the residential factor. Now, through you, Madam President, to the auditor, that's essentially, we would need this appropriation for the residential factor, correct?
Well, you would need to, you're voting on the residential factor and the percentages. You would need to vote on this prior to that, because that will also, that would be adjusted to the revenue factor.
Correct. So, again, I think that's, before we get too far down the whole procedure and how this came forward, which again, I understand some of the frustration my colleagues have indicated, but I do think that in terms of making certain that a rate is set through DOR and that we meet our obligations, the danger that we're flirting with, just so that everybody knows, right, is the potential of not being able to collect any revenues from January through to May if we don't get this done in a timely fashion.
Right.
And if that's not a crisis, I don't know what is. But again, I would just strongly encourage that we move forward and get this done. Thank you.
Councilor Cron.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to just give a few comments and then a few questions to Mr. Cavanaugh, Mrs. Sealy, if you could. Just getting back to, if I could get a clarification real quick from the auditor, how much does this run to cut around roughly $400,000 this past budget season? Do you have the exact numbers on that, if I could, through the president? And the only reason why I'm asking this question is $400,000 that we cut under our budget this past time around. It relates to the tax rate coming up today. Is that correct, Mr. Cavanaugh?
In relation to the certification of free, we went through the expenditures and eliminated just under $400,000 in previously unspent money from various departments, some going back to previous years the departments wanted to hang on to because they had contracts going to those years. So we went through virtually everything, shared with the auditor, along the canceled encumbrances, and picked up about, I think it was $400,000, which was put towards what came out as a free cash certified within the state. So we went through that exercise and had to give credit for it.
Now, this tax increase, option 1 is $456 and option 2 is $356. That's on the average house of $397,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, obviously, people that are living in Squantum on the top tier are going to be paying a lot more than that if we go in. Is there, by the way, is there an option 3 at all? Is there another one?
We didn't come up with an option.
You sure?
Just
Better than this, maybe get to 256, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously those people are going to be paying more, obviously because their houses are valued a little higher. And then there's some on the bottom tier, and I won't say the names in here, in the boroughs of the city that are going to pay less. I want to get back a little bit to the residential burden share that has happened here. Besides snow and ice deficit, it's the residential burden share. Now I'm looking at this booklet right here. City of Quincy, fiscal year 2017, page 4 and 5, okay? And what it says is the difference between residential and commercial.
That's the assessor's point, correct?
The assessor's point. So over the last few years, I've almost seen a deduction of a percentage closer, we're almost roughly 1% that's going on here, going on to the residential and less onto the commercial. The reason why I'm asking this question is when can we get to a point where we're going the opposite direction, where our commercial base is actually getting a percentage and taking the burden off of the residential side?
Councilor DeBona, if I had the answer to that question, I would love to share it. Keep in mind that assessors reflect value. They do this under the law so that they have the data to defend what value they're putting on a property. The market is driving this increase in the residential class. It's seen in the market, in the sales. When we, like I said, we submit to the DOR for certification, it's a series of reports that we submit. The DOR, works as the auditor, and they go through our reports that we submit, and they determine where, in relation to where the values are going to go to. As seen from my charts, the commercial class is increasing. It's not increasing at the rate of the residential, which is seen from what the market is doing. So to answer your question on that, it's really, it's really market driven.
I have to commend Councilor Kroll and Councilor Finn with the conservative end of it. We sit up here during budget season and all times through what gets appropriated here. And I'm a fiscally conservative as well as these two talking about it, that every dollar that comes through this body comes into particular tonight. These increases in people's, what they're going to pay on their taxes each year is going to relate to the money that's appropriated along the way as well. I just feel that I look at a neighboring town like Braintree and I see so much commercial-based growth that's come out of that town and has really shifted the residential side of it. And it was in the newspaper, Patriot Ledger had it this past couple of weeks, just on the fact that commercial base is just booming. And I know that they have a lot of storefronts there and they've stolen our glory, to be honest with you. Because that downtown used to be Shoppers Town USA, and Braintree just took it and ran with it. And I'm just talking about how can we produce more commercial-based businesses, I guess you can call it, here in Quincy, Massachusetts, to maybe offset a little bit of that residential side.
Right, and I do understand where you're going with it. I think it's a question that maybe the economic, section of the city could maybe testify on, as for assessors, we're reflecting value, we're reflecting data that's already happening in the market. I do think it's very difficult to compare municipalities. There's so many different areas that you can compare on. I see from our charts that I believe Erica put together, Quincy is seeing, an astronomic amount of growth this year, which was, by the chart, was higher than Braintree. Like I say, keep in mind, we're, as assessors, reflecting on what's taking place in the market. So until the market drives this change where we all of a sudden see, an abundance of new growth in that commercial class, then, it's hard to tell at what point, we could, see, like I say, that this residential class is growing at a percentage that we're shifting, from capital commercial to shift it.
And then lastly, to get this on for the next year, when does this commercial growth have to take place? When does it have to transpire or be reassessed?
So for FY17, which is the current fiscal year we're in, is based on an assessment date of January 1st, 2016. We've adopted the section of the law, which is referenced in my PowerPoint, that allows us to pick up new growth as if it was there January 1, and we're allowed to pick it up percent complete as of June 30th. So any of these projects that you see taking place, depending on what percent they were completed as of June 30th, that's determining the value that it contributed to FY17. For FY18, that would be based on January 1, 2017, which we're coming close to, and we would also be able to pick up growth up until this coming June 30th for the FY18 tax roll.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to ask one last question to Mr. Kavanaugh, if I could. Mr. Kavanaugh? We had an $11 million increase in this last tax budget. Do you think we'll be anywhere near that, below it?
Talking about the levy increase?
No, we're talking about the tax rate. We're talking about the fiscal year, is it 18? 17, 18.
Oh, the budget.
Budget. The only reason why I asked that question is where are we trying to at? I know it's very early for forecasting, but are you going through the numbers now?
We're beginning to set up some of the parameters. We're actually going to go to a new software base, which should make it easier, a little more easy to manipulate and adjust on the change. When we interact with each department head, it's going to make it easier for them to lay out what their wishes are and for us to have constant communications. Before, we were predominantly using spreadsheets and then trying to go back to units and do projections each year, as well as accumulating year-to-date for that department as we're doing it. This format is going to work a lot quicker and a lot easier. Eric's heavily involved.
Thank you so much. That's it for me. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor King.
Thank you, Madam President. I really just want to say that my parents are certainly laughing at home watching this circus tonight. This is pretty fun. But in all seriousness, this, I don't want to lose track of what we have been talking about, which seems to be saving people on average $100 now. We're saving people $95 on average later. And as the time value of money tells us, $1 now is worth more than $1 in the future due to circumstances that we don't know and can't control, such as interest rates and inflation. But I do want to give considerable credit to my colleague, Councilor Kroll, who put in the majority of the effort to make sure that we could find some savings for the taxpayer, which we hope to implement tonight. So how can we move this forward? I'd like to figure out how we can move this forward.
I think Councilor Harris was about to do that.
Okay, well, I'll do it if you don't mind. I'd love to do it for you. Motion to accept and approve this ordinance for...
It's already there.
Okay,
so
then
you just have to move the question, I believe.
Anyway, however it needs to go on.
All right, so there is a motion to move the question. Yes, all those in favor? And so first and second? Seconded by Councilor Harris. Yep, all on the motion? On the motion to move the question? Okay, well, we have to vote on that first. Okay, so there's a motion to move the question has been made and seconded. All those in favor of moving the question say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Okay, nobody's against. We're going to move the question.
All
So
right.
we're just going to
On the
vote. No, we're just, moving the question means you just vote.
Okay, I just want to make
A point.
just, the discussion
Okay,
earlier.
go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you,
Okay.
Madam President. The discussion earlier relative to the order of the expenditure I support. It was the procedure that I was concerned about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Forrest. All right, Madam Clerk, call the roll. Please.
Counselor King.
Yes.
Counselor Crowe. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaForest.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
9 members.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
Yes, item number 4 on the agenda, 2016-274, adopting percentages of local tax for each class of real and personal property for FY17.
Okay.
We deferred.
Okay, so there's nothing actually. Okay. So is there a motion? But it's actually not that, that's not the item. It's actually the next item, which is this adopting the residential factor, which is item 5, I believe. Is that- We haven't, so. Wait a minute.
There's 2 tasks before
So
us. We have
what-
to accept the classifications, and then we have to accept the...
So is there a motion to?
I would make the motion that we accept adopt the percentages of local tax by each class of real and personal property for FY17.
Okay, so motion by Councilor Finn, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Councilor Calhoun.
Through you to the Director of Municipal Finance.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Did he not know he was the Director of Municipal Finance?
Well, he wasn't getting up, but I don't even think he heard you.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening.
Okay, so the percentages of local tax by each class of real and personal property for fiscal year 17 affects the overall amount the city will levy, correct?
That's correct, but that should be addressed to the assessor. Probably better.
But you answered it. As soon as I go outside of your field of expertise, you let me know. But if you have answers, give them. If you can't, to wherever I can best get the
Is
answers.
that correct?
All right. Should she agree with you?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
she agreed.
Okay. What was the plan for the free cash, the $4.9 million in free cash before the last minute appropriation of $3.7 million?
The plan under option 1 would have had, at any time between the setting of the 2017 tax rate tonight, the 12th, 19th, God forbid, in the end of fiscal year 2017, June 30th, the city would have had that window to appropriate the appropriate portion of the $4.876 million in free cash to eliminate the $3.707 million in deficit originally scheduled for fiscal year 2018. We could have eliminated it in 17, and we never would have had to have raised it in the future.
Right, but that was never an order before us.
That was never what.
That wasn't an order before us.
No, it was not in an order.
That was the internal thinking of what that free cash was going to be used for?
Correct. That was the advice of financial advisors on how to proceed.
Is that we would have taken the $4.9 million in free cash.
4.876. We wouldn't have to have had done anything with it tonight, but we would have had the window between the tax rate setting for 2017 and the end of the fiscal year to eliminate the 18 deficit on the DOR amortization schedule.
Which is what we just did.
What you just did with the 3.7 million was to raise that money in this tax year. So the 3.707 million for 18 is still sitting there. That's for us to deal with right now, scheduled to deal with on the fiscal 2018 tax rate, approximately $95. We haven't that one.
Madam Clerk, what's the order of the measure that passed 3.7? What's the order number?
280.
218?
283.
283. All right, Mr. Kavanaugh, you've read what's been introduced and passed as Council Order 2016-283, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what that says, stop me if this is something you haven't heard before. The sum of $3.7 million is hereby appropriated to the Snow and Ice DOR Organization Schedule year 2017. The same is to be charged from free cash. So what we just did, what you're calling option 2, is to take $3.7 million and pay off the Snow and Ice deficit 2017 amortization.
Correct.
Right, hold on a second.
It's not quite, oh, sorry.
But, and when I said, what were we going to do with the free cash? You said we had the next 6 months to pay off that same account, right?
No,
Okay.
that's a different 3.7.
So you're talking about the 2018?
Correct.
Okay. And we were going to levy, which means raise from the taxpayers now the 3.7 million.
Right, there's two 3.7 million. One we're
17
obligated to
and
take
18.
care of this year.
17 we have to pay this year.
We have to pay this year on this
18
year's tax
we
rate.
have to pay next year.
That order would take 3.7 million in free cash now for this tax rate and pay off this year's, year 2, that 3.7 million, thereby using up free cash but lowering the tax rate without doing that.
Not the tax rate this year.
Yes, this tax rate goes down
Now it does.
by
So it's-
using the 3.7 million in free cash in 17.
Right.
The other option was don't touch free cash until after this tax rate is set. This year's tax rate, originally option 1, what we were advised was to raise that 3.7 million along with the deficit from last year. That has to be taken care of in this tax rate.
Right.
Option 1 took care of it one way, and option 2 is delaying it.
So delaying it until the time that the body, the mayor had previously requested, the body agreed to. That's the delay. The delay is following the plan we all agreed to last year. When we adopted the amortization schedule, the mayor put it before us.
Correct.
Entered into the state
Correct.
program.
Correct.
That was so put it off to when we all had previously agreed we were going to.
Leave it where it was.
Right, okay. And just to be clear, option 1 that the mayor presented was a tax increase of $460 to the average tax,
Correct.
average property value tax.
Right, just we use that as a measuring stick.
Right.
There's 9 different classes.
Now that this body has approved the order that just came in about an hour ago of $3.7 million for free cash, to take the sum out of free cash to pay the 2017. That means the tax bill would go up $360 about.
Correct.
So option 1 is $460, option 3 is $360.
Correct. For 17, correct, sir.
How long have you been Director of Municipal Finance?
This is my 6th tax year.
Doesn't seem like that long.
Sometimes
Me.
it seems a little long.
Yeah. Kind of treated we have always, while you've been in that position, we've always used the DOR certified free cash to offset the tax rate, right?
No, we have not. We've only used it 4 out of 5 years.
4 out of 5 years, okay. And when we're doing this December, setting the tax rate, doing the classification, we also have in the past pretty consistently looked at other ways in which to essentially lower the tax rate.
Yes.
And this particular year, We weren't looking at those same options that we looked at in the past.
No, I disagree. What we did was aggressively pursue options to increase our free cash positions, and that therefore put us in a better position to make a decision whichever option we went forward with. So we increased free cash by the elimination of unexpended encumbrances in departments, not only last year, but in previous years, that they may have indicated, no, those are contracts, we're going to spend that money, we still have people working. We kind of called them out on it, and we were able to increase free cash about $400,000.
This year.
Yes.
So you've used all of the prior year encumbrances?
I wouldn't say all of them, but we worked very hard. We get down to $2,000 invoices that we were looking at as to whether they were legit or we could cancel.
And because that raises, because there's certain things you can do to lower the tax rate. One is use free cash. One is to use prior year encumbrances, which essentially are debts you thought you were going to have, but never ended up materializing, so that it ends up freeing up some money.
Right. You repurpose that money.
Repurpose that money, and you throw it at the tax rate to keep it low for the taxpayers. In the past, we've also reduced the health insurance costs, right, because of the December payment.
Never this early. I know we've utilized it in the past, but that's usually when we're well into the entire fiscal year. We can kind of predict what's going to happen that last month or two, get a solid trend, and then you can cut back. We did that last year. Transportation supplies was another one. The price of gas had dropped. We were able to take $300,000 and use it towards the end of the year towards departments that had run into a little trouble, like fire department overtime, rescue truck expenses. And the DOR gives you more leeway in the last couple of weeks, months of the year to do those transfers.
When did you do that? When you said other departments that have run into trouble, when did you do that? When did you shift?
It's usually in the last quarter of the year. And specifically, we do the year-end transfers June 15th.
And that's when we have the first round of free cash certified by the DOR?
No, free cash isn't certified until the fall. We have to get all of our receipts in by November 30th to make sure our fund balances aren't in deficits from various grants and what have you. So it usually takes us from November 30th till a midpoint in October to get our free cash lined up.
Okay. Some of the other things that have been done in the past to lower the tax rate, keep the tax bills low, is to close out unfilled positions, right? We've done that in the past when we said, here's a budgeted position that was passed in, took effect July. It's now December. The position hasn't been filled. It'll be closed out, and we'll use that line item to go towards, treat it like a prior year encumbrance. It'll go towards buying down the tax rate.
What I would refer to that in my experience is when there's been unfilled positions, what happens is that department usually would have a surplus for that line item, for that positions, if it's plural, more work is unfilled, although I can't remember that happening a lot. So they would have a surplus. But another department, I mentioned fire department overtime, which is it's kind of an annual issue. There's usually departments that might have gone into deficit.
The fire department OT's chronic deficit, which is why a position was justified in the new budget for a financial director to oversee those aspects of the fire department. So I don't expect that that's an issue that's affecting the tax rate now, right? At this midpoint?
I guess it's a good point. I wasn't here for that debate, but oh, you mean the fire department?
Yeah,
one?
the fire department
Exactly.
OT is not
Good
an issue
example.
right now, right?
Good example.
But we do have positions that haven't been filled, that are budgeted.
I defer to the HR director on that. I don't keep a position count, but control accounts with HR.
HR director? Perhaps, don't go away. Through you to the manager representative, there are unfilled positions, correct?
Council, from time to time, in a rolling way, positions do open up. In some departments, when those positions open up, they're immediately posted. In some departments, that requires overtime to fill in the gaps. Some of them remain open. Sometimes people work out a grade. So yes, there are a small number of open positions that are in the process of being filled. They don't stay open very long because, as you know, the process, the job opening comes up, it's posted, members of whatever particular bargaining unit are allowed to post in for those jobs, and the cycle sort of begins. So person A applies for the job, then person A's job opens up, and then person C's job opens up as you go up the ladder. For instance, a working foreman's position, something along those lines. Other departments, like the fire department, the police department, openings are primarily covered by overtime and shift additions.
So the one that comes to mind, only because as a counselor, I interact with the office and previously position, but there's a position in the law office that was vacated when a new position was created in the budget. And it's my understanding that position still hasn't been filled, so we don't close that out for the year. We're at like the halfway point. I mean, is that not closed out
No.
for the year? That's
That's a position that we intend to fill, necessary to fill, and it won't be closed out.
So I get, what I guess I'm driving at here with that is, so I don't know off the top of my head what, and I'm just calling my one particular position, the law department, but I don't know what that salary was, but so that we have half a year where there's no one who's been in that position. So it's almost, from July 1st, no one's been in that position. So where is the savings captured with salary and benefits for that position that's been vacant for half a year, half a fiscal year? Where is that captured and reflected?
That's captured in the line item for that position within that budget. If you look at the monthly expense and revenue, and if you looked at that particular, you said it was a legal position, that would show a surplus growing in that position, which filters down to the bottom line. So legal as a whole would show that it had a surplus at whatever particular point in the year. And if that happens in more than one position, you're going to see a larger number growing, and it becomes a target for future determination. Do we really need the position? When are we filling it? But ultimately, we'd end up with a surplus if enough weeks go by.
Right. When is that captured? So that particular position, and just using this as an example, I'm sure there's many positions that are somewhat open, a couple months here or there. Another position is city engineer, which I think has been open for quite some time as well. When do we capture the savings in salary and benefits on those positions?
Year end.
Year end. Okay. So wouldn't that be similar to another way in which you could lower the tax rate is by a mid-year budget cut? Wouldn't that be similar to coming in and cutting the budget by half because it was unfilled for half a year? So you could realize that savings immediately and utilize any of those monies to help offset the tax rate.
I'd have to look at case by case, counsel. I think it would come down to a decision being made between the administration and the department head whether or not it needed to be filled, was filled, why isn't it open?
Well, I mean, I'm not even saying you eliminate the position. As Mr. Walker says, for instance, for the law position, it's a needed position that will be filled when they find a qualified candidate, which that's fine. I have no qualm with that. But for half the year, it wasn't filled. So it's not like you're going to pay whoever, the man or woman who comes in and fills that position double. I mean, you realize that half, right?
Yeah, I agree with the scenario you're painting. I'm just referring to the fact that if there's a delay, it creates surplus. Breakage is another term that we use for it. Ultimately, it would show up at year end as a surplus, explainable by how long the position were open. But if the plan ultimately is to fill the slot, then you don't cut it from the budget.
The total budget increase was $10 million last year over this year.
Correct. It was roughly 277 to 287.
What is that in terms of a rate change to cover that 10 million?
What was that percent?
What would it be in terms of
I think it was 4.2%. Is that correct?
Not budget over budget. I'm saying take the 10 million and put a price tag on it in terms of the average taxpayer's bill. What would that be?
The budgetary increase of $10 million, well, it's roughly 25,
Per million?
72 per million.
So it's about $250.
About that, but I'd rather break out an analysis, everything encompassed in that, but roughly you're correct.
Okay. And in addition to the budget, whatever budget increase this body supported, so $250 increase. In addition to that, there are other items which we're paying for by levy taxes, right? One of which is the overage in the snow and ice budget.
Oh, correct. Additions to that expense, when you look at the makeup of the tax bill, 50% of the tax bill increase was the combination of the residential burden shift and the snow and ice deficit. That made up 50%. And the school budget was another, on the bill,
I saw the chart.
10%, right on down the line.
But in terms of what goes on top of just the budget, so you have the budget, that's how the city spends money. But on top of the budget, you have some other items, two of which are the snow and ice deficit.
And this residential burden.
One from this last winter and one from 2 winters ago.
Correct.
3.7.
4.4 million this tax rate had to be in.
3.7 from 2 years ago and 700,000 from the last year.
Correct. 760.
So when does that number come before the body? The 700,000. So let's just take that for example. When does that $700,000 come before the body? Because it's not an amount that this body appropriated. So we said, here's your budget, Commissioner Raimondi, here's your snow and ice budget. This is what we expect you to take care of the city on. And then they go past that budget, spends nearly $1 million over. We're just on the hook for that. There's no, that never comes back to the council to say, you accept this, you're going to raise the money. This is the vote for that, right? This is the only time we get a say in the overages that need to be offset.
That's correct, Council. There are two accounts which the Department of Revenue authorizes cities and towns to spend into deficit for. One is snow and ice. The city and town can spend whatever is necessary in determining how much needs to be done to make the city's streets safe. The second one is judgments in the legal department. We have no cap, no limit on that. Both of those items always go to the following year's tax rate right now to be settled on that year's tax rate. Those are the only two accounts.
If we budgeted an appropriate, not appropriate, if we budgeted an amount that covered that entire expenditure, we wouldn't be back here raising extra money from the taxpayer at this point of the year.
I agree 100%.
Right.
In 2008, I believe the snow and ice budget was $300,000. It's been increased approximately $250,000 every year for the past 9 years. We're about 2.1, 2.2 million now. Still wasn't enough last year. God knows it wasn't enough in 2015. We appropriate $200,000 for judgments. That's a judgment call, no pun intended. We've looked at that before, but the city solicitor felt that, not knowing year to year your wins and losses, that the $200,000 was adequate for budgetary purposes, and then you see what happens. But you're right, if we budgeted $10 million in snow and ice, 2015, it still wouldn't have been enough. Last year, we would have had a $7 million surplus.
I don't see that ever happening, a $7 million surplus in the snow and ice budget. And I know few would have seen a $7 million deficit at any time either, but, So it's worth, what you noted is, it's important that the body has appropriated extra money every year, additional monies year over year for the snow and ice budget, and I think, that I think is really, I commend the mayor for that, and I do it every year because I think realistic budgeting makes sense. Why? Just because the state allows us to deficit spend, into two accounts. We shouldn't ignore those accounts and pretend like we don't spend. So I commend the mayor and your office for realistically budgeting those. I could have sworn this last time that we were at that realistic number. And maybe I'm misremembering, maybe it's what you said now that we're a little bit off. But $700,000 is a lot more than what I recall when we voted on that budget being anticipated. You understand what I'm saying?
I think I do. You know, obviously, the weather, what it's going to be, very difficult to predict. Our goal is to keep an eye on the 5-year average and try to maintain the budget at least the last 5-year average of snowfall. Things seem to get a little more volatile these days. I don't know why. Well, actually, I get a feeling that I can't say. Some people believe in it, some people don't. But winters seem to be a little bit more drastic. The number keeps going up, and I think we need to keep increasing that.
You're talking about global warming. I just got it.
What's that?
Global warming? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I just got it. And we're forecasting, and we're saying, 6 months ago, and we're saying, all right, this winter, this is what we're going to budget for it. One, I think two things need to happen. One, we need to do a better job of staying within our budget. And two, we need to do a better job of budgeting actual costs that are going to be incurred. And if you look at it, I mean, the judgment line is another one. Every year has been in deficit. 2015, 125,000. 2016, we're what? 260,000? There's 2017 now, and it's 220,000. 2016 was 260,000. 2011, 510. 2013, 443. I mean, the budget's like $200,000 for that account. We're blowing way past that budget.
Some of the deficits in the judgment account were actually related to the snow. The city is a self-insurer, so damages to private property fences and things like that, the city had to pay for, so that caused a jump in those years. Not that I'm making expenses, but when we lose in court, we're self-insured, so those things are going to happen. I think, the policy we try to follow, both in the weather fund, snow and ice fund, and judgments, is what's the recent history, let's add a little bit to it, and let's try to keep up with it. The difficult decision is to allocate money in the budget, which is going to increase taxes for something we're not sure of. So we try to keep up with it and just keep moving along year after year. I think the progress in the snow and ice budget, it's noteworthy. 300,000 up to 2.2 million, a $250,000 a year. Keep going.
I agree with you, but at some point, because when we do it in the budget season, it's a debate. It's a weighing another $250,000 in that account versus something else, creating a new department, for instance. Okay, we get to weigh that and make a decision. But when it comes to us at this point, we just have to pay it. There's no decision to be made. It's, you pay it, that's your decision. And from my perspective, as a policy, that's difficult because there's no engagement on that. There's no, residents weighing in on that. There's no, what do you think? We pay it. We have no choice. And as a result, the taxes have to go up because of this deficit. Let me ask you, was there any consideration given to making cuts in the budget to offset some of the tax increase that's being asked in the levy?
No, because the budget was set in the spring, and we didn't know the tax increase until it balanced last Tuesday or Wednesday, late Tuesday or Wednesday, we balanced it.
And at that point, was there any consideration in the administration to making mid-year budget cuts to get us through the rest of the year to keep the tax rate down?
I did not have any discussions along those lines. I don't know if others did.
I think this plays into what may be upcoming on the council agenda. We have a capital improvement plan that's $125 million worth of borrowing that the council is being asked to consider. We keep doing this. We keep borrowing this money. We keep, as a city, we keep borrowing this money, doing more and more when we're not meeting our budgetary obligations at the front end. And so, again, from my perspective, that's a frustrating situation to be in. When, I would like to know this information. So you said that our financial advisors now are saying we need to have more money in the stabilization. I don't recall hearing that a lot in the past, call it 6 years that you've been here, okay? I've been here 7 years.
Yeah, it's been pretty constant.
Well, no, what they say is you should raise taxes closer to the levy to build up your financial stability.
Part and parcel of the same message. They want us to raise taxes and use more of the excess levy capacity and simultaneously put more in stabilization in other reserve funds like the inclement weather fund, the OPEB fund. We started an OPEB trust fund. So there's a balance involved. They're asking for a lot. They want you to do a lot of things in a lot of different areas, and it calls for the choices that you're pretty familiar with as far as what comes before you every week.
And at the same time, when we ask them about the borrowing, they say our debt position is good or strong, that we have room to continue to borrow.
That's correct. We're within our debt ratios. We know that cities and towns are going to borrow for financing the long-term assets. We can't buy fire trucks and 12 police cars and big dump trucks that cost $300,000. You can't do that out of the regular budget. So you try to pay for it over the life of the asset to equal it out. Schools, you can't do that out of the budget. You have to finance that. So the whole financing aspect, the ongoing borrowing, it's a part of government. It's part of every government. And what you have to do is keep your eye on the ratios. Are you exceeding your ratios? Meaning maybe you're borrowing too much. If your debt service is too high, you're hitting a red line, like in a car, too much. We're below that. Our debt service actually fell by $200,000 last year. We're financing new projects, schools, programs, CIP. We're financing those as old bonds fall off. They completely paid. Started in the 1990s. As they fall off, it's like opening a parking space for new debt. And the debt we're replacing the old debt with is at very low interest rates, so we're able to do even more projects. So there's a balance, but we're within our budget, we're within our caps. We're getting pats on the back for doing borrowing the correct way. We're not in any warning territory. Nobody's saying, you better watch yourself.
Well,
There's some cities with high...
our financial outlook's been downgraded, hasn't it?
Excuse me?
Our financial outlook has been downgraded, hasn't it?
No, we're AA+. There's 10 slots, we're in the 9th slot. They've given us a negative outlook in concern to OPEB and pension financing long-term over 25, 30, 40 years. They want us to come up with a plan to increase the amount of those liabilities that are funded. We're a little bit below the state average in what's funded in those, but it is a 35-year low.
Well, I appreciate your responses to that. I think it's always a difficult situation when we find ourselves in debt that has to be paid.
No, time flies.
Yeah, I know. But I agree with Councilor Kroll and what he spoke about earlier, which is, the city's being developed. There's all sorts of, I think there's all sorts of negative impacts to traffic, road condition, and residents. Every time I'm anywhere, say, where's the benefit to them? The downtown looks great, but my street is horrible. My street is filled with potholes, or I can't get home from work in a reasonable hour, or whatever it is. There's cut-through traffic on my street because everyone's trying to beat the lights and get to the highway, whatever. I don't think there is enough benefit going to the residents. And I think that's reflected here in what our new real numbers are. It's not coming back to the residents enough in terms of how we're setting that tax rate. So I agree with that sentiment that was raised by Councilor Kroll. And lastly, I'm frustrated by the process this year, Mark. This seemed to be, at lack of a better word, far sloppier than it normally is. I mean, this giving us a new financial order at 8 o'clock, 8:30 on the night of a council meeting while we're in session. That's never happened before while I've been here, and it's disappointing. I mean, I was emailing you on Friday midday saying the fact that I didn't have the tax recap sheet by that point was disturbing, and you guys created a new alternative tax recap sheet at some point today or tonight, arguably, right? Is that, when was this option?
There were conversations after the original tax rate plan was done with members of the body, and I was not privy to those calls, but
I wasn't privy to them either.
I think that resulted in the additional option put before you. I think it was a way to try to make amends on what had taken place up to that point in time. We didn't finish the tax rate until last Wednesday.
Right, and you got the material to the council for tonight's meeting, Monday night's meeting, Friday afternoon, which I understand happens, you know, it's frustrating, but never have we been given financial matters during a council meeting and expect to take action on it. Essentially, again, with a gun to our head, being told, well, the DOR needs to certify something, and that to me isn't the way you should run a, you know, any business, any type of entity, a nonprofit, or government, to make financial decisions on the fly, and to come up with, I mean, to change the numbers on the fly tonight, just at the meeting, literally, while I'm sitting at this desk, you guys present us with changed numbers that's significantly changed the tax burden on residents, which is ultimately what we're talking about. And it was for the better, so I supported it. I didn't object to it. I didn't think it came in properly, and I made that point. But I wasn't going to not vote for it, and I wasn't going to object to it because I wasn't going to stick an extra $95, an extra $100 on the taxpayer because procedure wasn't properly followed. That's ludicrous, but it makes me question, it really does, the way in which this was done tonight, makes me question if you can change the numbers on the fly, then why can't you change them again? In a matter of minutes, between when we start talking about this, when the council meeting starts, in a matter of minutes, you found $3.7 million to reduce the burden on taxpayers by $100. And I wonder if we hold out, how much longer will you be able to find additional money for taxpayers to save the taxpayer money? Well, I don't know, because I believed your numbers on Friday, and then some counselors said, yeah, this is a pretty big tax hit. I'm not comfortable with this. And all of a sudden, the numbers changed during a council meeting to something that may be more palatable at $350 than it was at $460. And it just, I think it's sloppy. I'll leave it at that. I wonder if we would hold out longer if we could get a better deal for the taxpayer. Because that's the message that it says. When you're doing stuff in the middle of a council meeting, just changing numbers on the fly. That's what it suggests to me, is that there's more numbers to be found. Maybe we should be considering mid-year budget cuts. Maybe we should be considering closing out positions that remain unfilled. Maybe we shouldn't be adding new unfunded positions that don't have ordinances. Those are the kind of things that I think should be on the table, and I wonder if we held out longer if they wouldn't be put on the table. Thank you, Mark, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Crowe.
Mark. He's probably just standing up for 1 second. I'm going to bring it back and, hopefully kind of summarize everything that I heard this evening. I do agree with the process leading up to this evening. Probably could have been a lot better than it was. Introducing the option for work on the fly. But I also want to point out, a couple of things. I know you mentioned the outlook. I think the outlook really spoke to OPEB and spoke to stabilization. There's another key feature that the analysts thought that we could see some room for improvement. So that's probably short term, more correctable than obviously the longer term, just the proverbial elephant in the room, other post-employment benefits. But getting back to this, I want to just reiterate the fact that a tax rate is set essentially with any given fiscal year budget and every single appropriation that's approved thereto, with this exception, which essentially was a policy decision. And through advocacy of this body, to the administration, we were able to develop option 2, which, if my math is correct, will essentially caps on savings of
22% from the originally proposed option 1.
I didn't do that number, I can't validate it.
It's
I'm not telling you you're wrong.
22%.
It was when are we gonna use the 3.7 million in free cash? Were we gonna pay for it early
I get it.
or let it go?
Sure.
That's the difference.
And the difference is, you know, the anticipated net new revenues to come through the door for FY18 call, right? So
Sure, that's part of the future.
right, and it's important to look at the future, right?
The
Because-
other aspect, though, I don't want you to lose sight of, is that they were asking us to pay off the 2018 early. That's a paper transaction. Free cash is just on paper, that money's not in the bank.
Right.
The deficit, the amortization is not a bill to be paid, all the plow drivers were paid.
No,
It's just a paper transaction, so our fund balances would remain that much higher.
Mhm.
Money in the bank to the consultants who are always in my ear.
No, understood. Well, like I said, that, you know, just like the old saying, free cash is not free, but free cash will be there next year. And
Not free.
I'm anticipating, or betting, and, you know, if we continue to work within a budget, we continue to realize and materialize net new growth through all this construction, we would exceed exponentially above expectations to service the $3.75 million piece of debt hanging out in the ledger. That's the reality of the situation. And, you know, I look forward to continue to have these conversations. It's exciting that the city is growing and there is new revenue coming in. You know, council's bonus point, and this is where I'm done, I promise. There is new commercial interest. We're seeing that along in my district, which is a good thing because, right, when you look at the piece of the pie, the majority of the heavy lifting is done by the commercial. So I'm very curious to see what the future holds. But like I said, I think those new revenue streams coming into the city, if used correctly, are strong and can really do, you know, a service to continuing to keep the taxpayers' best interest at hand. And thank you for letting me speak, Madam President.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Sabano.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be short. I just got one question. Now that it came to my attention that the short-term bans that we have out there, just talking a little bit about how things can change real fast, is the interest rates are starting to spike a little bit. And we got, you know, just on the 30-year fixes, we just hit the 4.0 or over. Is there any financial, I guess you can call it, consulting that some of these short-term bans are they on interest only? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, are the rates on adjustable or they are fixed?
No, they're fixed for the first year. It's
First
usually
year.
a one-year ban. You have the option to renew it.
Okay.
But it's interest only that you're paying, and those are still around 2%.
And the only reason why I ask this is if all of a sudden stuff starts spiking in the next few months, is that going to impact anything that's going on in this body today? I mean, it could affect CIP allocations, whether we go in long-term bond or what we usually go in 20 years on
It depends on the asset. We try to match the length of the bond or the portion of that bond. If we're doing a multi-million-dollar bond that covers a lot of assets, we can tailor it so that 5-year assets are in there and they're paid off over 5 years, 10, 15, and so forth. So we're looking at that, but whenever we model those, we always model them at a higher rate. The rates we've been using in the all the borrowing models that you'll see and that anticipate how much project capacity we can afford, we'll use 4%. If we just got 3%, guaranteed we're using 4% in the next model. We're waiting and anticipating that it's going up. We've been doing that for the past 5 years, waiting for the rates to rise. We've been lucky.
Is there a possibility or any advice to do a consolidation of some of this short-term bans? Is there a possibility, or is that something that's not?
Well, there's no possibility to refinance those because they're at rock bottom.
Rock bottom, okay.
We're not going below. We're going.
I just want to make sure moving forward. that
We're always looking at that.
Because things are starting to change a little bit. Like
I agree.
a little bit up, a little, you know, we're almost plateauing off on some of these houses and the values. You don't know what's going to happen. We're going into new presidential in January, so.
Thankfully, the people that stand to gain a great deal by that on the issuance of bonds and getting commissions are really tough. But the phone is ringing. If something happened overnight in Japan, the phone's ringing at 8:35 saying, hey, there's an opportunity.
So you're on top of everything right now?
Our consultants call us to make sure that they know that we could save money by issuing something.
Anything to save the taxpayer money, I'm just trying to ask questions now. Thank you so much, Madam President. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, Councilor Barnes.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank Assessor Healy for her work putting together our PowerPoint presentation. One of the areas that I always get concerned with throughout the year and as we have development coming online is the conversion of commercial properties to residential. I've seen that a lot in my district in the periphery of downtown. So, for example, Gilson Road, Johnson Ave project. Existing use was residential, but it was zoned business C. Bridge Street was zoned business C. And so we look at some of these parcels that we're developing that are bringing offline from the business into residential. Now, mind you, they're maximizing their residential use and we are whole on the tax rate, but that's just is an area that is always concerning me as to when we're talking about residential, maybe it looks like 81.8 in 2014 to 85% versus the 15% with the CIP. So just a ratio that always pings for me when we're looking about these projects going online to on the conversion, but I will be supporting the tax rate this year. Motion to move the question.
Okay, great. So, Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Counselor King.
Yes.
Counselor Pearl. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaForest.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Palmucci.
No.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members.
Thank you, Madam President. Next item. Thank you, Mr. Kevin.
Next item is number 5 on the agenda, 2016-275, adoption residential factor of 0.863743 for fiscal year 17.
Is there a motion? Motion to approve by Councilor Kroll, seconded by Councilor Finn? Yes. Okay. On the motion, anyone? Very well. Madam Clerk?
Counselor King.
Yes.
Counselor Kroll.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Finn.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor LaForest.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor Palmucci.
No.
President Hughes.
Yes.
8 members.
Next item.
Next item is number 6 on the agenda, 2016-276. Order acceptance, the Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5A. Property tax rate.
Motion to waive the reading, accepted. Councilor Palmucci.
I'd ask that these be the following, they're a little out of order.
6, 7, and
Yeah, and 11.
11.
They're all relatively for the same purpose. They are state statutes that allow the city to give exemptions on taxes to seniors, disabled, veterans, various classifications of people. The purpose of this is to explore raising the amounts. So I think this particular one is for a swap program, which, I don't know, some sort of swap thing. It stands for something, SWAP. But it's a seniors working abatement program. So it's for seniors who volunteer in the city. Currently, I think they're allowed an exemption for one amount. This would increase that by about 50%. So it has to be referred to the Finance Committee for follow-up.
Okay, so item 6, refer to ordinance committee
And Finance.
and finance. Item 7.
Item 7 on the agenda, 2016-277.
I'll waive the reading on that. Again, it's another measure for the same thing. It's It's additional real estate exemptions for taxpayers who are granted personal exemptions. Again, the purpose of these measures are to folks who are most negatively impacted by tax increases can feel some relief. And I know I've talked to a number of counselors about this, and I think it's generally supported by all counselors. But it's about, especially for seniors who are on fixed incomes, they're the least able to absorb even modest increases in the tax bill. So this is just another attempt to increase the amount of exemptions that these folks can claim to help lower their tax bills. It has to be referred to finance and ordinance.
Okay, refer to ordinance and finance committee, thank you. And then we'll actually just take out of order if there's no objection. Capital Order 2016-280, which is a resolve from Councilor Calhoun. Councilor Calhoun, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, this was just a resolve lowering the age from 65 to 55 to make more people eligible. That would require a home rule petition. It's not part of the state program. So this is a resolve just asking the administration to look at it to see whether or not it's feasible, is it realistic. So I guess refer that to the finance committee and send it to the administration.
All right, so refer to ordinance and send.
No, not ordinance, just finance.
I mean, sorry, finance, excuse me. And send to the administration for feasibility study. Okay, thank you. Therefore, Madam Clerk, I think that brings us to item 9.
Number 9 on the agenda, 2016-202, order amending council order 2016-202, Sterling Middle School appropriation. 59 million Sterling Middle School project scope and budget agreement.
Okay. Solicitor Timmons.
Good evening again, Madam President, members of the council. The purpose of this particular order is to amend the Sterling bond authorization previously voted. The language that you previously voted had been approved by the Mass School Building Authority. It was their form. Following that approval, which occurred in October, the Mass Municipal Relief Act was enacted effective first week of November. And that included language that allows for flexibility in how communities use the premium they get when they issue bonds. In order to avail ourselves of that flexibility, it was suggested by bond counsel that this order be rewritten. And it allows you to use bond premium toward the actual debt as opposed to the prior practice of just returning it to the general fund. So this is merely an updating of a council order enacted in October so that it is consistent with the Mass Municipal Relief Act, which was enacted the first week of November.
Okay.
Recommended by bond counsel.
All right, thank you.
Move past.
I think it needs to be re-advertised because it's being rewritten, so it's going to move to committee. So, thank you. To Finance and Public Buildings, thank you, Solicitor.
The next order is the same
Yes,
thing.
yes. Order 2016-279. So we will do the same and refer that to Finance and Public Buildings. All right. And that ends our agenda items for this evening. Next, we will move to approval of previous meeting minutes, November 21st meeting minutes. You should have them. Without objection, motion to approve. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Madam Clerk.
I have 2 communications, new traffic request, refer to ordinance committee to advertise it. Ward 5, Councilor Hughes, remove handicap parking at 92 Old Colony Ave. And Ward 6, Councilor Harris, add handicap parking at 56 holding of the street. We will move to ordinance for advertisement.
Thank you. Unfinished business from the preceding meeting? Any? Seeing none? All right. We'll move to reports of committees. There you go. Council first.
Thank you. And the ordinance committee, Council Order 2016-258 in Ward 3, add handicap parking at 102 Bowden Street and with positive recommendation.
Motion to approve by Council Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
Council Order 2016-259 in Ward 4, adding do not enter on Connell Street, southwestbound, intersecting with Adams Street from 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday, and with positive recommendation.
Motion approved by Councilor Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
And members.
Council Order 2016-260 in Ward 5, add 2-hour parking on the west side of Wallaston Ave from 75 feet south of Elm Ave to 75 feet north of Fenner Street, and with positive recommendation.
Positive recommendation. So motion approved by Councilor Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
And members.
Council Order 2016-261, also in Ward 5, to add no parking on the east side of Wallaston Ave from Fenner Street to Elm Ave, and with positive recommendation.
Motion approved by Councilor Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe. Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
And members.
Council Order 2016-263 in Ward 6, add no parking at 50 Standish Road, and with positive recommendation.
Motion to approve by Councilor Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe. Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
And members.
And finally, Council Order 2016-264, also in Ward 6, add no parking on both sides of Allstate Street, Quincy Shore Drive to 50 feet south of Quincy Shore Drive, and with positive recommendation.
Motion approved by Councilor Force, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Sorry, yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
I'll send them.
Thank you, Councilor Force. Yes, Councilor Crowe.
Thank you,
Yes.
Madam President.
Finance.
Reports of committees coming out of finance, and they meeting earlier this evening to discuss the tax incremental financing associated with Granite Telecommunications pertaining to Council Order 2016-266, coming out of committee with a positive recommendation.
Okay, motion approved by Councilor Crowe, seconded by Councilor Harris. On the motion, Madam Clerk.
Council King.
Yes.
Council Crowe.
Yes.
Council DeBona.
Yes.
Council Finn.
Yes.
Council Harris.
Yes.
Council LaFarge.
Yes.
Council Leeang.
Yes.
Council Calmucci.
Yes.
President Hughes.
Yes.
And members.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Further reports of committees? Yes, Councilor Calmucci.
No, go ahead, let's schedule.
Two quick things. One, on behalf of the Oversight Committee, I would ask that we put the underground economy measures and wage theft measures on the full council agenda for a vote on the 19th.
Okay.
And there's been a working group with the solicitor's office finalizing the language as it was raised in the last oversight committee meeting that spoke about the language committee. I expect what we'll have that night is either no changes at all, because everyone comes agree, or a nice, neat package for the council to consider. But I think it'll be appropriate to put on the agenda if there's no action to be taken, which trust it won't be, we can always skip over it. There's two measures. I don't know if the resolve needs to be on that night, or if that was the impetus of it.
Right. That can be filed later.
All right, so it'll be 2016-74 and 2016-137.
Okay. All right, the clerk is making a note of that for the
Thank you.
agenda.
And then, on behalf of the Public Safety Committee, perhaps I should have done this under unfinished business, but I'd ask the mayor's representative for an update on Council Order 2016-252. This was the resolution seeking to prepare for potential legalization of marijuana. It's been legalized. It's going into effect. The ballot initiative goes into effect in 10 days. We get an update. We haven't heard anything. I haven't received anything in writing. Just wanted to know where we're at with that in terms of the city.
Madam President, the mayor and the legal team have been working consistently on this. We expect to have an ordinance before you for review at the meeting of the 19th. We've been in touch with the legislative
Would that
delegation.
be before the meeting or during the meeting, the 19th?
We'll have that before the meeting.
Great.
But people are working on it, and we expect to have something for you, this body.
And you're thinking the 19th, given the fact that it goes into effect?
Yeah, I mean, we've been in touch with the legislative delegation, and there seems to be some onus to the fact that, don't rush anything. There is going to be some time to deal with the ramifications.
I see everyone talking about that.
Right.
And we've had this conversation. So I see I read it in the paper that everyone's talking about essentially tolling. That I saw Treasurer Goldberg said it. I think the governor has said it, the lieutenant governor, I've heard legislative leaders. But it's been,
Yeah,
it's been talked about that it's going to happen at some point.
The
we need to
law,
get a case of
right,
this.
the law as written sets a number of dates. Even if the first date goes into effect, it does not preclude us from drafting and adopting a fairly aggressive zoning ordinance, which right now is the mayor's going strategy, that's the way to go, similar to the work that you did with the mayor, Councilor Amy's body on the medical marijuana zoning, to tighten our rules as much as we possibly can, to regulate the location and operation of businesses. That first date in December is one of several involved in the law, with the key date being sometime, I think, in 2017 or 18 is when the shops are, under the existing scenario, mandated to be allowed to be open. So we do have some time before someone can come in here and say, hey, I'm opening up Joe's Pot Shop. That's the new my future business.
My concern isn't so much the opening of the business, because I think there's some other issues that we, as a city, not issues, but there's some other
Absolutely.
levers that we can work to make sure it's appropriate there. But my real concern is the same as it was with medical marijuana, is a home cultivation. I mean, once you start allowing large-scale home cultivation, you essentially put a crime target in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And what we did when we did the medical marijuana ordinance, the exclusion was if you cannot, if you don't have access to medicinal marijuana, you can home cultivate. By allowing medicinal marijuana in the city of Quincy, we eliminated the ability of any homeowner or home resident to cultivate in their home, thus essentially taking out what I think is the scariest part of this, is that someone's going to grow. I mean, look at what happened in Willard Street with the illegal grow operation that they had. And there was a shooting, and an ear got taken. It's a magnet for crime if you allow this kind of thing to happen. So for me, anyways, I see down the horizon there could be problems with the shops opening, but on the very near front, as of December 15th, the legislature doesn't do something and step in and foretold us, which they say they're going to, we could have this home cultivation, and I think that is a very scary prospect to allow in our residential neighborhood. So look forward to seeing that before the meeting on the 12th. It's going to be terrific. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Great. Yes, Council.
Yeah, again, Council Calhoun was raising certain things within public safety, but I did want to, and I don't expect Mr. Walker can answer, but I would definitely like an update from you at some point related to 2016-201, related to the information I was requesting from the fire chief. So, and again, we can talk about that some more offline, but thank you.
Thank you. Very well. Presentations of, right? Yes. Presentations of petitions, memorials, or remonstrance. Yes, Councilor Palanche.
I have two. The first is, I think, I could be wrong, but I think this is the last night that Mr. Ronan will be among us, taking a new position and leaving the Patriot Ledger. Is that right, Mr. Ronan? It's not your last night. We wish him very good luck. Future endeavors. You did a decent job. You got most of the facts right in your coverage. I'll let Mr. Walker speak to the coverage of the mayor, but we wish you well, and good luck in your future endeavors. The second remonstrance is, and I do this not in jest, I really don't, but it's hard to not say, and kind of comical there, but I really do want to wish Santa well in his recovery. I know a couple of my colleagues were there on Saturday for the Santa drop, and it was mildly horrifying, the hard landing that Santa and one of the elves took. Councilor DeBona, Councilor Kroll, and our children were there enjoying the festivities. And Mr. Mike Burns suffered a broken leg as a result. I'm told he's home now, recuperating from a very serious broken leg. This was the 40th jump by this group, Santa's jumpers. And in finding more about Mr. Burns and the jumpers, learned quite a bit about this operation. Not just that it was the 40th year, but the elves, and spoiler alert, if there's any children watching, shut off the TV, I guess.
TV.
I don't know why any child would want to watch
this particular program.
Yeah.
Then seriously, commit them.
But they're all volunteers. They've been doing this. They're all volunteers. They're all volunteers. The city does pay for the plane. The gas and the services of the plane. We pay $1,000 a year, and they accept the $1,000, but they ask the city to make it out to the Home for Little Wanderers. So they really do give back. They enjoy this. They cycle guys in and out, but and I know also Barry. The two things Barry told me was he has a backup Santa, which how good is Barry, right? He's a backup Santa just in case. Fantastic. But there's also a local school class that will be sending some get well cards to Santa. But honestly, it was a scary thing to see, and we do wish him well. It's obviously a serious injury. We wish Mr. Burns well, and we hope he gets back up on the reindeer and makes it for Christmas. And it's probably just as good of a time to say kudos to Barry Welsh and the team at the Parks and Rec. Now that I have a young child, I'm enjoying some of the things that the city does in terms of celebrating Christmas more than I did when I was just a single guy. It was weird to go to,
It would be weird if you went to the Santa drop.
Right.
Just leave that alone. All right. So the mayor's representative went. All right, enough.
But no, with the Thanksgiving Day parade, the tree lighting ceremony, the Santa drop, every year they do a fantastic job, and hundreds and hundreds of families get to participate in wonderful events, and it's a kudos to Barry Welsh, his team, and the staff over there for what they do. So, if we could send perhaps a citation, Barry's going to get some information about Mr. Burns and the rest of the Santa jumpers. Perhaps a citation commemorating them in the 40th.
And I'll give it to the elf on the shelf tonight when I go home.
You're still gonna get cool.
All right, great. Thank you, Councilor Palanche. Councilor Liang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a more serious note, I just want to extend our condolences and warmest wishes and well wishes to two families of folks who work for our great city. The first is Mr. Paul Anderson, who's a food inspector in the health department, who very sadly lost his wife, Carolyn Anderson, at only 59 years old to cancer this past week. She has a great family, has very passionate about volunteering her life, mostly at Boston Children's Hospital, did work at the Boston Marathon as well. Loved to throw parties, filled with her pets, baking, winning at games, and again, she's survived by her loving husband, Paul, who is in the health department here in the city of Quincy. The second goes out to Mike Howell in IT, who lost his father, Carl. Mr. Howell was the head of maintenance at the Quincy City Hospital for many years, and prior to that, he worked at the hospital as a carpenter. He also served in the U.S. Army. He's a third-degree member of the Knights of Columbus, St. Francis Xavier Council in Weymouth, and he enjoyed dancing with his wife, watching sports, spending time with his many grandchildren, and having coffee with his longtime friends. He leaves behind a wife, Carmela Millie, so again, I just wanted to send our condolences to both those families. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lee. Okay, Councilor Forrest.
Just ready to schedule on meeting.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Oh, okay, all right. Councilor Paul.
Thank you, Madam President. It is with a heavy heart this evening that we recognize the passing of a great community servant to the city of Quincy and lifetime Quincy Point resident, George Nassas. I've known George a long time, and the passing was certainly unexpected. What a wonderful guy. Retired as a public educator. I believe he taught language over in Branchwood, which, foreign language. A very unique individual with a specialized skill set, but just a guy that always paid attention to what was going on in Quincy. I had coffee with him, this must have been 3 weeks ago. So, thoughts and prayers. I know Councilor Bowen knows the family very well, but thoughts and prayers with the Nassas family as they deal with this unexpected tragedy.
Thank you, Councilor Paul. Councilor Kane.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to recognize and remember Bruce Iaconis, who was a neighbor of my family's on South Central Ave, Ward 3 resident, a great man, who passed away on November 21st after 18 months battling stage 4 lung cancer. It was very personal for me and for my family. My father, he was diagnosed with cancer at the same time, and they were able to at least travel through some road together during that battle. Bruce put forth a very hard battle and succumbed a couple weeks ago. He was a gifted musician, he was a carpenter, consummate host, welcomed my family into his home many occasions, including many New Years. He was the founder of a company called Process Facilities Engineering, which is an engineering company known for innovation in the design of processing pharmaceutical facilities both in the United States and abroad. He was someone that you could absolutely sit next to and listen to for days, the stories that he would have of his travels abroad, the experiences in Saudi Arabia, etc., which were always fun. He's going to be very missed by his family. His wife Maureen, his eldest son Andrew, his daughter Nora and Sarah, as well as his devoted son-in-laws Aaron, Andrew, cousin Neil Burgess, Robert, Julie, and their families. He'll be very missed by my family also, and the neighbors that benefited from his presence for so many years in South Central and Wollaston Hill. So our blessings and condolences on behalf of the council to his family and friends.
Thank you, Councilor King. Anyone else? Anyone? Okay, great. Motions, orders, and resolutions. Okay, scheduling committee meetings, Councilor Forrest.
Thank you. I am looking for next Monday, December 12th, 6:30 p.m. ordinance committee meeting on Council Order 2016-267. That is the land disposition agreement, parcel R1, Hancock parking lot.
Great.
And a subsequent December 19th on ordinance, public hearing relative to the same matter on the 19th.
Okay.
Public hearing time, 6:30, public hearing on the 19th. It's early. Are we going to double up another meeting? Oh, Patriots game. We can't up the council time. No.
All right, I was just just.
No, Monday night football, we discussed.
We can't change the council at the regular meeting. So.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
All right, great.
Thank
Thank you, Councilor LaForest. Anyone else schedule public schedule committee meetings and public hearings? Nope. All right, at this time, Councilor Palmucci.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Yay, guys have it. Thank you.